The sound of sledgehammers against drywall jolted me from my Zoom meeting with clients. I raced downstairs in disbelief, my professional composure shattering at the sight before me. My mother-in-law, Diana, directing workers as they demolished the kitchen wall I'd lovingly restored with my own hands. "This load-bearing wall simply has to go, Emma," she announced without looking up from her designer notepad. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Nathan always hated how closed off this space felt. I stood frozen, my laptop still clutched in my hand, the voices of my financial advisory clients calling out from the screen. "Hi, I'm Emma Cooper, and 3 weeks ago I thought I understood the meaning of invasion. I was wrong. What I didn't know then was that my in-laws weren't just after my kitchen, they were orchestrating the complete financial hijacking of my life." Snow fell gently outside my office window as I finalized investment projections for the Ferguson account. January in Lakeside was always beautiful. The frozen lake visible from my home office, a reminder of why I'd fallen in love with this craftsman house 4 years ago, long before I met Nathan. The renovation had been my passion project. Every exposed beam, refinished hardwood floor, and restored glass cabinet told a story of late nights, YouTube tutorials, and the satisfaction of creating something lasting with my own hands. The demolition. Sounds resumed downstairs, each crack like a physical blow. 3 days ago, Nathan had called from his business trip to Seattle with the news. My parents lost their condo. The developer went bankrupt, and they've got nowhere to go. They're staying with us until they get back on their feet. Maybe a month, tops. A month. It had seemed manageable then. What I hadn't counted on was Diana and George Mitchell showing up with a moving truck and renovation crew while I was in the middle of my quarterly client reviews at Horizon Financial. I set my laptop down, muted the call with a quick apology, and took a deep breath before confronting the chaos below. The kitchen was unrecognizable. The vintage cabinets I'd spent weeks restoring were already gone, replaced by stacks of gleaming white modular units still in their packaging. The Italian marble countertops Nathan and I had selected for our anniversary lay covered in demolition dust. "Diana," I managed, keeping my voice steady, "we need to talk before any more decisions are made about my house." My mother-in-law turned, with that particular smile that always reminded me of a realtor showing a slightly overpriced property. "Our house now, dear. Nathan's name is on the deed, after all. And speaking of decisions, George and I took the liberty of choosing new paint, colors for the living room. That earthy green simply doesn't maximize the potential value." I bit back my first response. "Nathan and I should discuss any major renovations together. He's not even here." "Oh, he's given us his full blessing," Diana waved dismissively. "He agrees this place needs a professional touch. No offense to your DIY efforts." My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Mom said kitchen renovation started. Exciting update. See you next week. Love you." Underneath that betrayal was a notification from my banking app, a substantial withdrawal from our joint account. My stomach dropped. "Diana, where's George?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "At the design center, of course. The formal dining room needs proper wainscoting if we're going to host family gatherings here. Your little podcast table will need to find another home." The construction workers continued hammering, oblivious to the tension. One of them accidentally knocked against the built-in bookshelves I'd designed myself, sending my finance books tumbling to the floor. "Careful with those." I moved to rescue my collection, kneeling to gather the fallen volumes. Diana's designer. Heels clicked across the hardwood as she approached. "While we're discussing changes, Emma, I've been meaning to ask, wouldn't you be more comfortable in the guest bedroom? The primary has that lovely eastern exposure for George's morning meditation." I stood slowly, books clutched to my chest like armor. "This has gone far enough. I need you to stop the demolition until Nathan gets home. This is still my house." "Is it, though?" Diana's smile never faltered. Nathan mentioned you've been spending excessive hours at work lately. He's concerned about your priorities. House is meant to be a home, not an investment property. The irony wasn't lost on me. Diana, the retired real estate agent who'd flipped houses for 30 years, lecturing me about treating property as a home. The renovations continue, she added with finality. George has already ordered custom cabinetry, non-refundable deposits, you understand. My phone buzzed again. Olivia, my best friend and the sharpest attorney in Lakeside. Our weekly lunch was scheduled for today. Perfect timing. I need to handle some client issues, I said, not bothering to hide my retreat as I headed for the door, grabbing my coat and laptop bag. Please don't make any more structural changes before I return. Diana was already directing the workers again, her voice carrying that familiar, authoritative tone I'd heard at countless family gatherings. The load-bearing wall stays for now, but mark that section for the kitchen island expansion. Nathan's always wanted a proper chef's kitchen. The bitter cold outside was almost welcome after the suffocating tension inside. Snow crunched under my boots as I made my way to my car, hands shaking as I texted Olivia. Emergency. Meet now? Her response was immediate. Lakeside Brew. 15 Minerger bring documents. Documents. Even in crisis, Olivia thought like an attorney. I slid into my car, opening my banking app again to screenshot the unauthorized withdrawal. $5,000 transferred to an account labeled Mitchell Renovations, LLC. My podcast microphone sat in the passenger seat, where I'd left it after recording yesterday's episode on financial boundaries in relationships. The irony would have been amusing if I weren't living the exact opposite of my professional advice. As I pulled away from the house, my house, Diana appeared at the front door, phone pressed to her ear, watching me leave with an expression that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. The quaint downtown area of Lakeside was bustling despite the cold, tourists and locals alike enjoying the winter charm of our lakefront shops. Lakeside Brew occupied the corner spot with the best view of the frozen expanse, its windows frosted with decorative snowflakes. Olivia was already waiting, 2 steaming mugs on the table before her. Her courtroom-ready appearance, perfectly tailored pantsuit and not a strand of her dark hair out of place, contrasted with my harried state. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, as I collapsed into the chair opposite her. "Or worse, a bad investment." "How about in-laws with demolition equipment?" I wrapped my cold hands around the mug. "They're tearing apart my kitchen as we speak." Olivia's professional mask slipped for a moment, revealing genuine shock. "Without your permission?" "With Nathan's, apparently." I pulled out my phone, showing her the text and bank withdrawal. "They lost their condo in that Lakeview development. Scandal, and now they're treating my house like their next renovation project." "The Mitchell Aurora Tower development?" Olivia leaned forward. "Emma, that wasn't just a bankruptcy. There are rumors of serious financial improprieties. Several investors have contacted our firm." I hadn't known that part. "Diana just said the developer went bankrupt. There's more to it." Olivia pulled out her tablet, typing rapidly. "George, Mitchell's name has come up in our preliminary research. He was an early investor who pulled out just before everything collapsed." "Convenient timing," I murmured, thinking of the non-refundable deposits Diana had mentioned. "Very." Olivia looked up from her screen. "And now they're remodeling your house with your money?" "A house I bought before I even met Nathan." I scrolled through my phone gallery, finding photos of the kitchen renovation I'd completed myself 2 years ago. "Look what they're destroying! I restored those cabinets myself." Olivia studied the before and after photos, her expression softening. "It was beautiful, Em. It was mine." The past tense felt like another loss. "Yes, but legally..." Olivia hesitated, slipping back into lawyer mode. "When did you add Nathan to the deed?" "Last year, for our 2nd anniversary." I thought it romantic at the time, a gesture of commitment. But that doesn't give his parents the right to take over. No, it doesn't. Olivia set down her mug decisively. First thing we need to do is freeze that joint account before they drain it completely. My phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app. Another withdrawal, this time for $12,000. Too late. I turned the screen toward her. I should have seen this coming. Diana's been making comments about my excessive earnings for months, how a wife shouldn't outshine her husband financially. Charming, Olivia muttered. Does Nathan know they're spending your money? I'm not sure what Nathan knows anymore. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The admission hurt more than I expected. He's been distant lately, taking more business trips, staying later at the office. When does he return from Seattle? Next week. But I'm not waiting that long. I need to stop them before they demolish. Anything else that matters to me? Olivia's expression turned serious. Emma, as your friend, I'm concerned. As your lawyer, I'm alarmed. This isn't just about renovations. This pattern of behavior, moving in without proper discussion, making major changes to your property, accessing your finances, it has red flags all over it. What kind of red flags? The chill I felt had nothing to do with the winter weather outside. The kind that suggests this might be a calculated move rather than a temporary solution to their housing problem. Olivia pulled out a legal pad. Let's start with what we know. Timeline, please. I recounted the events of the past 3 days. Nathan's call about his parents needing a place to stay, their arrival with moving trucks and renovation crews, Diana's immediate takeover of the household decisions and the financial withdrawals. Olivia's pen moved rapidly across the page. And before this, any financial discussions between Nathan and his parents recently? Changes in his behavior? Unusual questions about your assets? The questions made me uncomfortable. But as I thought, back over the past few months, patterns emerged that I'd overlooked. Nathan's sudden interest in my client list at Horizon Financial, his questions about my podcast revenue, the suggestion that we consolidate our separate retirement accounts. For simplicity, he's been pushing for me to add him as an authorized user on my primary credit card, I realized aloud. The one I've had since college. Perfect payment history, substantial credit limit. Did you? Olivia asked. Not yet. I've been meaning to, but work got busy. My excellent credit score suddenly felt like a dodged bullet. Thank goodness for procrastination, Olivia muttered. Anything else? Property discussions, estate planning, insurance policies? Nathan's been talking about life insurance lately. Substantial policies for both of us. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing pattern. Olivia, you don't think... I don't know what to think yet. She set down her pen. But I know we need to protect your assets immediately, starting with your house. My phone buzzed again, an email notification that made my blood run cold. What is it? Olivia asked, noticing my expression. An application confirmation. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. For a home equity line of credit. On my house. For $200,000. Olivia's professional composure cracked. Tell me you didn't apply for that. I didn't. My hands shook as I opened the email. But according to this, I did. Yesterday, while I was recording my podcast and meeting with clients. That's fraud, Olivia said flatly. Straightforward identity theft. By whom? Nathan? His parents? The betrayal felt physical, like the sledgehammers demolishing my kitchen. We're going to find out. Olivia gathered her things decisively. But not here. My office now. We need to contact the bank's fraud department immediately. As we stood to leave, my phone rang. Diana's number. I almost declined the call, but something made me answer, putting it on speaker so Olivia could hear. Emma, dear. Quick question. Diana's voice carried that particular tone of forced pleasantness. "Where do you keep your important documents? The refinancing appraiser needs to see the original deed." "Refinancing?" I repeated, meeting Olivia's alarmed gaze. "I haven't applied for refinancing." "Oh, Nathan took care of all that," Diana replied smoothly. "Such a thoughtful son, helping us secure our future. The equity in your home will be perfect for our new investment opportunity. It's practically guaranteed returns." "Diana," I said carefully, "I'm not refinancing my home for any investment opportunity." "Well, it's a bit late for objections." Her tone hardened slightly. "The paperwork is already filed. We just need the original deed for verification. Nathan said it might be in your home office." "Don't touch anything in my office," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And don't proceed with any refinancing. Nathan doesn't have authorization to do that without my consent." Diana's laugh held an edge of condescension. "Sweetie, your signature is already on the documents. Rather messy penmanship, I might add. You really should work on that." The call ended before I could respond. Olivia and I stared at each other in stunned silence. "That," Olivia said finally, "was a confession to forgery, on a recorded line." "And admission of a larger scheme," I added, thinking of Diana's mention of investment opportunities. "We're not just going to my office," Olivia decided, grabbing her coat. "We're going directly to the police. Bring your laptop and any financial records you can access remotely. This just became a criminal matter." As we stepped out into the swirling snow, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Mom says you're being difficult about the refinancing. Don't worry so much. It's a great opportunity for all of us. Trust me?" Trust. The word that had led me to add his name to my deed. The concept that had made me ignore the warning signs. The faith that was now shattered beyond recognition. I showed Olivia the message before typing my response. "Coming home now to discuss. Don't sign anything else until I arrive." "Good," Olivia approved. "Keep them thinking you're compliant while we get the authorities involved." What if Nathan really doesn't understand what they're doing? The question had been gnawing at me. What if he's just caught in the middle? Olivia's expression softened momentarily. "Then he'll have a chance to prove that. But right now, your financial security and legal standing are at risk. We focus on protecting you first, understanding his role second." The drive to the Lakeside Police Department was tense, the familiar streets of my adopted hometown now seeming alien and threatening. Had I ever really known the family I'd married into? Had I been so blinded by love, or perhaps by the desire for family after years on my own, that I'd missed obvious warning signs? Officer Patel met us in the reception area, her expression serious as Olivia explained the situation. As a financial advisor, I'd worked with clients who'd experienced fraud before, but I'd never imagined becoming a victim myself. The irony wasn't lost on me. Just last month, I'd recorded a podcast episode on recognizing signs of financial abuse. "Ms. Cooper," Officer Patel said, reviewing the evidence on my phone, "these are serious allegations. Identity theft, forgery, unauthorized access to financial accounts. Have you confronted your husband directly about these activities?" "He's currently in Seattle," I explained. "At least, that's what he told me." "We can verify that," she nodded. "In the meantime, I recommend you don't return home alone. If your in-laws are engaged in fraudulent activity, confronting them directly could escalate the situation." "But my house," I started. "Can be dealt with through proper legal channels," Officer Patel finished firmly. "Your safety comes first." "She can stay with me," Olivia offered immediately. "My condo has excellent security." Officer Patel nodded approvingly. "Good. We'll need formal statements from both of you, and we'll contact the financial institutions involved." "Ms. Cooper, do you have somewhere secure to access additional records? Financial statements, communication history with your husband and in-laws, property documents? My work office, I said, thinking of the secure servers at Horizon Financial. I have cloud backups of most important documents, and my work computer has encrypted access. Perfect. Gather what you can without alerting your family members. Officer Chen will accompany you to ensure there's no interference. She gestured to a younger officer who nodded respectfully. As Officer Chen escorted us out, my phone rang again. George this time, not Diana. I showed the screen to Officer Patel. Put it on speaker, she instructed. George's voice filled the small space, uncharacteristically animated. Emma, wonderful news. The investment opportunity I mentioned to Diana. We've been approved for the initial offering, with your house as collateral. We're looking at potential returns of 30% within 6 months. My house as collateral? I repeated, looking at Officer Patel, who nodded encouragingly. Yes. The refinancing paperwork is processing beautifully. Nathan's taking care of the final details from Seattle. Such a blessing having a son in marketing. He understands opportunity when he sees it. What exactly is this investment, George? I kept my voice neutral, following Officer Patel's silent guidance. The Westlake Revival Project. Luxury condominiums. With lake views, exclusive amenities. Similar to the Aurora Tower concept, but with improved structural elements. We've secured early investor status, which means preferred returns before public offering. Like the Aurora Tower, I repeated, the development that just went bankrupt. George's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Minor setback, different management. This time. Diana's handling the marketing strategy personally. I see. And how many other investors are involved? Small circle of family and close friends. George's voice turned conspiratorial. Diana's sister Patricia, Nathan's old college roommate, a few select clients from Diana's real estate days. Exclusive opportunity. Sounds too good to pass up, I said, watching Officer Patel typing notes rapidly. When can I see the prospectus? Oh, George seemed taken aback. Diana mentioned you preferred to leave the financial details to Nathan, given your emotional approach to money. My emotional approach to money had built a 6-figure investment portfolio before I'd met Nathan, but I swallowed the retort. I'd still like to review the documentation. Of course, George backpedaled. I'll have Diana prepare something suitable. Simple terms, nothing too complex. Thank you, George. I look forward to it. I ended the call, meeting Officer Patel's gaze. Investment fraud, she said immediately. Possibly a Ponzi scheme based on the mention of preferred returns before public offering. We need to contact the Financial Crimes Unit. The systematic dismantling of my life continued at the police station as I provided statement after statement, signed form after form, and watched Officer Patel's team build a case file that grew thicker by the hour. What had started as unauthorized? Kitchen renovations had expanded into potential wire fraud, identity theft, and investment scams that stretched back years before I'd even met Nathan. Ms. Cooper, Detective Marshall from the Financial Crimes Unit said, reviewing my statements. Based on what we're seeing, your in-laws appear to have an established pattern of this behavior. The Aurora Tower development wasn't their first failed project, and your husband has been involved in at least 3 previous instances. Nathan knew? The question came out smaller than I intended. The evidence suggests he was an active participant, not just an enabler. Detective Marshall's expression held professional sympathy. I understand this is difficult to process, but his digital footprint shows consistent involvement in creating marketing materials for these investment schemes, dating back to his college years. The betrayal settled into my bones, cold and final. The man I'd married, the life I'd built, the future I'd planned, all constructed on carefully crafted lies. What happens now? I asked, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. We've initiated a freeze on your joint accounts and the fraudulent credit applications, Officer Patel explained. The bank's fraud department has been notified about the forged signatures. As for your home, she hesitated. Because your husband is legally on the deed, the situation is complicated, Detective Marshall finished. We'll need a court order to prevent any further financial encumbrance of the property, which we're filing for immediately, Olivia added, looking up from her laptop where she'd been drafting legal documents for the past hour. Emma, we should also consider an emergency restraining order. Against my husband and his parents? The suggestion should have seemed extreme. Instead, it felt like the first sane response to an insane situation. Yes, their actions constitute financial abuse, which is grounds for protection. Olivia's tone was gentle but firm. It's not just about the money. It's about your safety and autonomy. My phone, which had been buzzing periodically throughout the interview, lit up with another notification. This time, it wasn't a text or call, but an alert from my home security system. Motion detected in my home office. Officer Patel leaned forward to view the notification. Do you have camera access? I nodded, opening the security app. The live feed showed Diana methodically going through my desk drawers, removing files and photographing documents with her phone. Behind her, George was disconnecting my computer, wrapping cords with practiced efficiency. Looks like they're removing evidence, Officer Patel observed. We need to move quickly. There's more, I said, navigating to another alert. The bedroom camera showed Nathan, supposedly in Seattle, packing my jewelry box into a suitcase. He lied about being out of town. Detective Marshall was already on his feet, calling for backup. Ms. Cooper, we're going to your residence now to secure the premises and any evidence. With your permission, we'll access the property using your keys. I handed them over wordlessly, watching as officers mobilized with surprising speed. Olivia squeezed my shoulder in silent support. One more thing, I said as Detective Marshall prepared to leave. Check the garage workshop. Behind the pegboard on the east wall, there's a hidden safe. It contains my original deed, birth certificate, and a backup drive with financial records. You hid these from your husband? Officer Patel asked, pausing at the door. Not intentionally, at first, I admitted. It was my personal organizational system from before we married. When Diana started making comments about my financial independence being unnecessary in a proper marriage, I decided to keep it private. Good instinct. Detective Marshall nodded approvingly. That backup drive could be crucial evidence. As they departed, Olivia and I remained in the interview room, the gravity of the situation settling around us like a heavy cloak. This isn't just about the house anymore, is it? I asked quietly. It never was, Olivia replied, her attorney persona momentarily replaced by fierce friendship. This was a systematic attempt to exploit your assets, your credit, and your trust. And based on what the detective said about previous incidents, I'm not their first target, I finished, just their latest. My phone buzzed again, a text from Nathan. Where are you? Mom says you're acting erratically. Come home so we can talk. Worried about you. I showed it to Olivia, who shook her head in disgust. Gaslighting. Classic abuser tactic. Make the victim think they're the unstable one. Should I respond? No. Let the police handle it from here. Another notification appeared. An email from my department head at Horizon. Financial. Urgent. Client concern regarding recent advice. Call immediately. My stomach dropped as I opened the message. According to the email, someone claiming to be my spouse had contacted several of my high-net-worth clients, suggesting they consider investing in an exclusive private development opportunity that I had personally vetted. They're targeting my clients now, I whispered, showing Olivia the email. Using my professional reputation to legitimize their scam. This just keeps expanding, Olivia muttered, adding the new information to her notes. Emma, we need to contact your firm's legal department immediately. Your professional liability could be at risk. The walls seemed to close in as the full scope of the disaster unfolded. My home invaded, my finances compromised, my marriage revealed as a sham, and now my professional reputation, the career I'd built meticulously over years, under threat. Officer Patel returned, her expression grave but determined. Ms. Cooper, we've secured your residence. Your husband and in-laws are being brought in for questioning. She hesitated. I should prepare you. The situation at your home is extensive. What do you mean? Beyond what you already knew about the kitchen renovations and document theft, we found evidence that they've been systematically photographing your financial documents for months. There's a detailed dossier on your assets, client relationships, and investment strategies. And, she paused, visibly uncomfortable. And, I prompted, and applications for life insurance policies in your name. Substantial policies, with your husband as the sole beneficiary. The room tilted slightly. Olivia's hand on my arm anchored me back to reality. That's... I couldn't find the words. Deeply concerning, Officer Patel finished diplomatically. We've also found correspondence regarding property transfers that would occur after Emma is no longer in the picture. The clinical description of what appeared to be plans for my elimination sent ice through my veins. Are you saying they were planning to... I couldn't complete the thought. We don't have explicit evidence of physical harm being planned, Officer Patel said carefully. But the financial maneuvering, when taken together with these insurance, applications and property transfer discussions, presents a disturbing pattern. I want that restraining order, I said to Olivia, who was already typing furiously on her phone. Already on it, she confirmed. Judge Watkins owes me a favor. We'll have emergency orders by morning. Officer Patel nodded approvingly. In the meantime, you absolutely cannot return home. We've stationed an officer at your residence to secure the premises and evidence, but your safety is our primary concern. My phone buzzed yet again, this time with multiple notifications from my banking app, attempted withdrawals from my personal accounts, credit card applications, changes to beneficiary designations on my retirement accounts. They're getting desperate, Officer Patel observed, looking over my shoulder. This flurry of activity suggests they know we're onto them. Can they access any of these accounts? I asked, scrolling through the alarming list of notifications. Not if they've been properly frozen, she assured me. But we should contact each institution directly to confirm security measures are in place. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls, formal statements, and legal filings. By midnight, I had spoken with fraud departments at 5 financial institutions, filed emergency requests to freeze my credit reports, and provided Detective Marshall with access to my digital records going back 5 years. When we finally left the police station, the snow had stopped, leaving Lakeside blanketed in pristine white that seemed to mock the chaos of my life. Olivia drove us to her downtown condo in silence, both of us too exhausted for conversation. You'll stay in my guest room, she said as we entered her sleek, minimalist space. Security system is top of the line, and the doorman has been instructed not to allow anyone up without explicit permission. Thank you, I said, the inadequacy of the words hanging in the air between us. Olivia, Don't, she interrupted gently. Don't apologize for being victimized. Don't second-guess yourself for trusting your husband. And definitely don't thank me for basic human decency. The simple absolution broke something inside me, and for the first time since seeing the demolition crew in my kitchen that morning, I allowed myself to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that acknowledged not just the financial betrayal but the loss of the future I had believed in. Olivia held me through it, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. When I finally quieted, she handed me a tissue and managed a small smile. You know what the worst part is? I said, my voice raw. I keep thinking about my podcast listeners, all that advice I've given about financial independence and recognizing the signs of financial abuse. How can I face them knowing I missed those exact signs in my own life? That, Olivia said firmly, is exactly why you will face them. Because now you understand in a way textbook knowledge could never provide. Your experience, painful as it is, will help others recognize these patterns before they escalate. The perspective shift was subtle but profound, from victim to survivor, from cautionary tale to educator, from loss to purpose. My phone buzzed one last time. Detective. Marshall with an update. Suspects in custody. Preliminary evidence confirms widespread fraud scheme involving multiple victims. Your backup drive providing crucial information. Rest assured we'll pursue this aggressively. Officer stationed at your residence overnight. I showed Olivia the message, a strange calm settling over me despite the devastation of the day. You know what this means? She asked. That I've lost my home, my marriage, and possibly my professional reputation in a single day. No. She took my hands in hers, her expression fierce with loyalty. It means you've exposed a criminal, operation that has harmed multiple victims. It means you've protected your clients from becoming their next targets. And it means you haven't lost your home. You've reclaimed it from people who tried to steal it from you. The reframing didn't erase the pain, but it offered a perspective that allowed me to breathe more easily. This wasn't the end of my story. It was merely the beginning of a different chapter, one where I would rebuild stronger and wiser than before. Tomorrow, I said, finding unexpected resolve in my voice, I need to start damage control with my clients and employer. And file for divorce, Olivia added pragmatically. And that, I agreed. But tonight. And tonight you rest, she finished. Everything else will wait until morning. As I settled into Olivia's guest room, surrounded by the unfamiliar but safe space that represented my new reality, I opened my laptop one last time. Instead of checking emails or financial accounts, I created a new document. The title came to me without hesitation. When Those Closest Become Your Greatest Threat. A Financial Advisor's Guide to Recognizing and Surviving Intimate Financial Abuse. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had become both the expert and the example. But as I began typing, organizing the hard-earned wisdom of the past 24 hours, I felt something unexpected beneath the pain and betrayal. Purpose. And the first fragile seedlings of power reclaimed. Morning came with brutal clarity as sunlight streamed through Olivia's guest room blinds. For a blissful moment, I forgot everything. The demolished kitchen, the forgeries, Nathan's betrayal. Then reality crashed back with the buzz of my phone. Another notification from my home security system. Diana and George were being escorted from my property by uniformed officers, their faces twisted with indignation even through the grainy footage. I watched, oddly detached, as Diana gestured dramatically toward the house, apparently arguing with the female officer who stood, clipboard in hand, unmoved by whatever justification was being offered. Got coffee, Olivia announced, appearing in the doorway with 2 steaming mugs. She noticed me watching the security feed and sat beside me on the bed. How many cameras did you have installed? 6, I admitted. After our home was broken, into last year, Nathan thought it was excessive. And now we know why. Olivia handed me a mug. Detective Marshall called. They're holding Nathan and his parents for questioning, but charges haven't been formally filed yet. They're building the case. I nodded, the coffee bitter on my tongue. What about my house? Crime scene for now. They're documenting everything, the renovations, the forged documents, every piece of evidence. Once they're finished, you can return. But it won't be home anymore, I finished quietly. The thought of returning to spaces that had been violated so thoroughly made my Skin crawl. Every corner would hold memories of betrayal. Olivia squeezed my hand. You can stay here as long as you need. No rush decisions. My phone rang. Marcus Daniels, my mentor at Horizon Financial. I'd sent him an urgent email last night explaining the situation in professional terms that betrayed none of the personal devastation behind it. I should take this, I murmured, and Olivia nodded, leaving me to the call. Emma? Marcus's familiar voice held none of his usual easygoing warmth. I've been in emergency meetings with legal since 5 a.m. How bad is this? I took a deep breath. Worse than I initially thought. They've been contacting my clients directly, using my name to legitimize an investment scheme similar to the Aurora Tower collapse. Christ. The single word conveyed volumes. The compliance team is having heart palpitations. The SEC gets wind of this. I know. That's why I reported it immediately. My professional training kicked in, steadying my voice. I've provided all documentation to law enforcement, including evidence that the communications were fraudulent and unauthorized. That helps, but Emma, Marcus paused. The board is concerned about potential liability. They're suggesting a temporary leave of absence while this is sorted out. The final blow. My career, the one thing I thought they couldn't touch, now compromised. I understand, I said, the words hollow in my throat. For what it's worth, I fought against it. Told them you're the victim here, not the perpetrator. Marcus sounded genuinely distressed. They're paying your full salary during the leave, benefits intact, but my clients will be reassigned. My reputation, under scrutiny. I finished his thought, a skill honed through years of professional partnership. Temporarily, he insisted. And I'll personally handle your key accounts. No one but me. When this blows over. If it blows over, I corrected, the reality of my situation sinking in deeper. When, Marcus repeated firmly. Emma, you've built the strongest client relationships in the firm. They trust you. We trust you. This is a precaution, not a punishment. After we disconnected, I sat motionless, staring at the unfamiliar walls of Olivia's guest room. In 24 hours, I'd lost my home, my marriage, and now my professional. Standing. The methodical dismantling of my life was so thorough it bordered on artistic. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Emma, it's Sophia, Nathan's sister. We need to talk. It's important. Please. Sophia Mitchell. The prodigal daughter who distanced herself from the family years ago for reasons Nathan had always described vaguely as differences in financial philosophy. I'd met her exactly once at our wedding, where she'd stood apart from the family, photos and left immediately after the ceremony. Diana had dismissed her as always difficult, while George had changed the subject entirely. I showed the message to Olivia, who had returned with more coffee and a plate of toast I couldn't imagine. Eating Sophia Mitchell, she mused. Wasn't she the one who refused to invest in one of their previous schemes, the art gallery or something? Lakeside Artists Collective, I confirmed. Nathan said she missed out on a great opportunity by being stubborn. Or she was the only smart one in the family. Olivia studied the message. Could be valuable insight, could also be a trap. Only one way to find out. I typed a response. Can meet at Lakeside Brew, public place, noon today. The reply was immediate. Thank you, we'll be there. Come alone, please. Olivia raised an eyebrow at that last request. Not happening. I'm your attorney, and I'm going. With you. Agreed. I set the phone aside and forced myself to eat a few bites of toast. But first, I need to contact my clients directly before rumors start circulating. Mass email? No. Personal calls. They deserve that much. Emma, that's over 50 high net worth clients. Then I better start now. The calls were excruciating, explaining without oversharing, reassuring without promising, maintaining professional composure while acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances. Most expressed shock and support. A few asked pointed questions about security protocols and oversight. 3 requested immediate transfer to different advisors. By 11:30, my voice was hoarse and my emotional reserves depleted, but I'd contacted every client on my primary list. The damage control wasn't perfect, but it was thorough, exactly as I'd approached every aspect of my professional life. "Ready?" Olivia asked, car keys already in hand. "As I'll ever be." Lakeside Brew was busier than yesterday, the weekend crowd of tourists and locals creating a buffer of anonymous chatter. We selected a corner table with clear sightlines to both exits, a precaution that would have seemed paranoid yesterday, but now felt necessary. Sophia Mitchell arrived precisely at noon, her resemblance to Nathan momentarily stealing my breath. The same angular features and expressive eyes, but where Nathan's always held calculated charm, hers carried wariness and something harder. Determination, perhaps. "Emma." She extended her hand formally, then noticed Olivia. "I asked you to come alone." "Olivia Reynolds, Emma's attorney," Olivia introduced herself smoothly. "Given the circumstances, I'm sure you understand the precaution." Sophia assessed Olivia briefly, then nodded. "Smart. I would have done the same." She sat, positioning herself with her back to the wall, another security measure that didn't go unnoticed. "You wanted to talk," I prompted when she didn't immediately begin. "Yes." Sophia placed a leather portfolio on the table but didn't open it. "First, I want to say I'm sorry for what they've done to you, for not warning you sooner." "You knew?" The question came out sharper than intended. "Not specifically, but I knew the pattern." She looked down at her hands, Nathan's hands with the same long fingers. "They've done this before, many times. The Aurora Tower wasn't their first scheme," I said, recalling Detective Marshall's comments. "It was their 6th, Sophia corrected. "That I know of." Olivia leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Mitchell, are you saying you have documentation of previous fraudulent activities by your family?" "Please call me Sophia." She tapped the portfolio. "And yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I've been gathering evidence for years." "Why?" I asked, the single word encompassing a universe of questions. Sophia's expression hardened. "Because they did it to me first." She opened the portfolio, removing a stack of meticulously organized documents protected in clear sleeves. 7 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, but the same pattern. I had inherited money from my grandmother, my father's mother, who never trusted Diana. I was establishing my photography studio, building a client base. Then, Nathan came to me with an incredible opportunity. A chance to help the family, while helping myself. The familiar phrasing sent a chill through me. Nathan had used almost identical words when suggesting I add him to my house deed. "They took everything," Sophia continued, her voice flat with old pain. "My inheritance, my business loans, my credit. By the time I realized what was happening, they had systematically drained every resource I had. When I confronted them, they claimed I had authorized everything. Had the paperwork to prove it, with my signature perfectly forged by my loving mother. That's why you weren't at family gatherings," I realized. "Nathan said you traveled constantly for work." A bitter smile crossed Sophia's face. "I was working constantly, all right. 3 jobs to rebuild my credit and life from scratch. The travel was a convenient fiction to explain my absence." "Why didn't you report them?" Olivia asked, her attorney's mind clearly cataloging potential legal avenues. "I tried." Sophia removed another document, a police report dated 6 years earlier. Detective filed it away as a family financial dispute. Suggested I get counseling for my misunderstandings about how families share resources. I recognized the gaslighting technique immediately. They got to the detective. Diana's cousin was married to his captain, Sophia confirmed. The investigation went nowhere, but I kept gathering evidence, tracking their schemes, building a case. For what purpose? Olivia asked, professional skepticism evident in her tone. If you weren't pursuing legal action? Initially, validation. I needed proof I wasn't crazy or ungrateful or financially irresponsible. All the things. They labeled me. Sophia straightened the already perfect stack of documents. Later, protection. Documentation that I wasn't involved in their activities, in case it all came crashing down. And eventually, she met my eyes directly, to help their next victim when they inevitably found one. Me, I said quietly. You. She nodded. I tried to warn you at the wedding, remember? My cryptic comment about keeping your finances separate? I did remember a brief, awkward exchange during the reception that I'd attributed to family tension. You said something about separate accounts being the key to marital harmony. Nathan interrupted before I could say more. Sophia's expression darkened. He's always been their perfect accomplice, the charming face that disarms suspicion. You're saying he's not just caught in the middle? That he's actively part of their schemes? The last remnant of hope that Nathan might be a victim himself withered. Sophia removed a final document from her portfolio, a flowchart of transactions, with Nathan's name highlighted throughout. He's their advance man, the one who identifies and cultivates targets, establishes trust, gains access. Diana and George execute the schemes, but Nathan selects the victims and creates the openings. The methodical calculation behind my entire relationship with Nathan hit me with physical force. He married me for my financial profile. Yes. Sophia didn't soften the blow. You were perfect, successful, independent, with established credit and assets, but also... She hesitated. Also what? I demanded. Eager for family, she finished gently. They target people with strong financial resources but emotional vulnerabilities. People who want connection badly enough to overlook warning signs. The assessment was brutally accurate. After years of building my career with single-minded focus, I had been hungry for the family connection Nathan had seemed to offer. The holiday gatherings, the sense of belonging, the shared future. I'd interpreted Diana's controlling tendencies as misguided affection, George's financial questions as genuine interest. I'd wanted family so badly, I'd willingly blinded myself. I'm not the only one, am I? I asked, already knowing the answer. No. Sophia pushed the portfolio toward me. There were 4 others before you. 2 divorced Nathan once the financial damage was done, believing it was just a failing marriage. 1 still thinks she made poor investment decisions on her own. And 1 what? Olivia prompted when Sophia trailed off. Vanished. Sophia's gaze was unflinching. Rebecca Winters, Nathan's first wife. After their divorce, she threatened to expose their schemes. 2 weeks later, she disappeared. Police ruled it a likely suicide. Abandoned car near Lakeside Cliff. No body ever recovered. You think they... I couldn't complete the thought. I don't know, Sophia admitted. But I found this in George's office when I was gathering my evidence. She withdrew a final document from a hidden pocket in the portfolio. A life insurance policy on Rebecca Winters, with Nathan as the sole beneficiary. It was paid in full 3 days after she disappeared. Olivia took the document, examining it with professional precision. This is significant evidence. Have you shared this with authorities? I tried. Same response as before. Family matter. Insufficient evidence. Sophia's frustration was palpable. But now, with your case, with multiple financial institutions involved and clear evidence of forgery and fraud, they can't dismiss it as a family dispute, I finished, understanding dawning. You're not just here to warn me. You want my help bringing them down. Yes. The single word held years of determination. Your evidence combined with mine creates a pattern too comprehensive to ignore. Detective Marshall has already contacted me based on documents they found in your home. I'm meeting with her this afternoon. Olivia was already taking notes. This changes the scope significantly. From individual fraud to organized serial financial crimes, possibly worse. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Marshall. New development. Diana Mitchell attempted to transfer property under your name this morning. Mortgage applications with your forged signature on multiple properties. Need you at station ASAP. I showed the message to Olivia and Sophia. They're desperate, Sophia noted, accelerating their usual timeline. Because we've exposed them, I agreed, a strange calm settling over me as pieces clicked into place. The temporary shock was receding, replaced by analytical clarity. The same mental state that served me when handling complex financial strategies. Emma, Olivia's voice carried a warning note. We need to consider that if they're desperate enough to continue committing fraud while under investigation, then they're desperate enough to ensure I can't testify, I finished. The danger should have terrified me, but instead it crystallized my resolve. Detective Marshall needs to know everything. Not just about the financial crimes, but about Rebecca Winters, too. Sophia gathered her materials with practiced efficiency. I'll drive separately to the station. Better not to be seen together until we're in a secure location. The practiced paranoia in her precautions spoke volumes about the years she'd spent looking over her shoulder, anticipating her family's next move. As she stood to leave, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. Why did you wait until now? You could have come forward when they first targeted me. Sophia paused, her expression complicated with regret and justification. I tried. In my way. That wedding warning. Anonymous tips to your firm's compliance department about Nathan's previous ventures. But ultimately, she met my eyes directly. No one would have believed me without evidence of a new crime. They're too good at what they do, too practiced at dismissing accusations as family jealousy or misunderstanding. And I needed to fail first, I concluded, understanding with painful clarity. You needed me to become their victim before my testimony would be credible. Yes. The admission clearly cost her. I'm sorry, Emma, I truly am. But 5 women before you weren't enough to stop them. Maybe 6 will be. After she left, Olivia and I sat in silence, processing the expanded dimensions of what had begun as kitchen renovations and was now revealing itself as a years-long criminal enterprise. We should get to the station, Olivia finally said, gathering her things. I nodded, but as we stood to leave, my phone rang. An unknown number with a Seattle area code. Should I answer? I asked Olivia. On speaker, she decided. Could be relevant to the case. The voice that greeted me was female, professionally pleasant, but with an undercurrent of urgency. Am I speaking with Emma Cooper? Yes, I confirmed. Who's calling? Jennifer Walters, senior fraud investigator with Pacific Northwest Banking Group. She introduced herself. I'm following up on unusual activity flagged in our system this morning. Several mortgage applications were submitted under your name, for properties in Seattle and Portland. I didn't apply for any mortgages, I said immediately. I'm already working with local authorities on related fraud issues. I suspected as much, she replied. The applications were submitted by a George Mitchell, claiming to be your financial advisor. When our verification system flagged inconsistencies, in the documentation, he provided supposed authorization letters with your signature. Our forensic analysis indicated likely forgery. Definitely forgery, I confirmed. Mr. Mitchell is currently being questioned by police in Lakeside regarding multiple instances of financial fraud, including identity theft and forgery. I see. Her tone shifted to something more serious. Ms. Cooper, these applications weren't just for new properties. They were attempting to refinance existing properties already under his name, adding you as a co-borrower with joint liability. The implication took a moment to register. He was trying to make me responsible for his existing debts? Precisely. 6 properties, all significantly underwater on their mortgages. Total liability would have exceeded $4 million. The breathtaking scope of the attempted fraud momentarily silenced me. Olivia leaned closer to the phone. "This is Olivia Reynolds, Ms. Cooper's attorney," she introduced herself. "Are you preserving all documentation related to these fraudulent applications?" "Absolutely," Jennifer confirmed. "Our security team has already compiled a complete file. We've placed fraud alerts on Ms. Cooper's information in our system and flagged the Mitchell accounts for investigation. I can have everything transferred to your local authorities. You mentioned Lakeside?" "Yes," I managed, finding my voice. Again. "Detective Marshall with the Lakeside Financial Crimes Unit." After providing the necessary contact information and ending the call, I sat back, trying to absorb this latest development. $4 million, I repeated numbly. They were trying to saddle me with $4 million in underwater mortgages. "Classic bust-out scheme," Olivia noted, her expression grim. "Maximize the victim's credit, then transfer the liability while extracting whatever liquid assets they can. But why now? Why so blatantly when they're already under investigation?" Olivia considered this. Last desperate grab before everything falls apart? Or they never expected to get caught, I finished, the realization chilling. They thought I'd be too confused, too emotional, too intimidated to fight back. Effectively, and they were wrong. Olivia's tone carried a fierce pride on my behalf. Let's go make them regret that miscalculation. The Lakeside police station hummed with activity as we arrived, the weekend bringing its usual complement of minor infractions and domestic disputes. Detective Marshall met us in the lobby, her expression professionally neutral, but with a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. "Ms. Cooper, Ms. Reynolds, if you'll follow me." She led us through secure doors into the investigation division, where multiple officers were organizing documents across a series of whiteboards. I recognized photos of my house among them, along with financial diagrams that mapped the complex web of transactions Diana and George had attempted. "Sophia Mitchell is already here," Detective Marshall informed us, gesturing toward a conference room where Sophia sat reviewing documents with another officer. Her evidence, combined with what we found in your home and the new information from Pacific Northwest Banking, has expanded this investigation considerably. "How considerably?" Olivia asked. "We've identified at least 12 potential victims across 3 states over the past decade," the detective replied. "The Mitchell family appears to have developed a sophisticated fraud operation targeting financially secure individuals through personal relationships, gradually assuming control of their assets, then moving on once resources were depleted. And Nathan's role?" I asked, needing confirmation of what Sophia had already revealed. Detective Marshall's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry, Ms. Cooper, but evidence indicates he was a willing and active participant. His primary function appears to have been identifying and cultivating potential targets, including you." Even expecting it, the confirmation felt like a physical blow. Our entire relationship was a setup. "Unfortunately, yes. We've found detailed notes on your financial standing dating back to before your first meeting, which, I should mention, appears to have been deliberately orchestrated rather than the chance encounter at a charity event you believed it to be. The calculated deception behind even our initial meeting, a supposed coincidence at a financial literacy fundraiser, unraveled whatever lingering doubt I might have harbored about Nathan's innocence. 3 years of memories recontextualized themselves in an instant. His interest in my career, his encouragement of my success, his apparent support of my independence, all designed to position me as the perfect mark. "I'd like to see him," said suddenly, surprising even myself. Detective Marshall exchanged a glance with Olivia. "That's not advisable during an ongoing investigation." "Not for reconciliation," I clarified. "For closure. I want him to know I'm not hiding, not broken, not intimidated. I want to look him in the eye while he knows I understand exactly what he did." "Emma," Olivia began, concern evident in her tone. "I need this," I insisted, meeting Detective Marshall's evaluating gaze. "Just 5 minutes, in your presence, with whatever security protocols you deem necessary." The detective considered this. Ordinarily, I would refuse. But given the emotional component of this case, and the fact that a brief confrontation might actually yield investigative value, she nodded decisively. 5 minutes, in an interview room with officers present and recording. No discussion of case specifics. "Thank you," I said, relief washing through me. The need to face Nathan directly had grown from a whisper to a shout in the space of minutes, not for reconciliation or explanation, but for something more fundamental: reclamation of my narrative. Detective Marshall led us deeper into the station, past holding cells where I caught a glimpse of George Mitchell sitting alone, his usual confidence replaced by sallow defeat. No sign of Diana. "Mrs. Mitchell has been transferred to county holding," the detective explained, noticing my glance. Her behavior became problematic during initial questioning. The interview room was standard-issue institutional: bare walls, basic table, uncomfortable chairs. Nathan sat alone, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his normally perfect appearance rumpled from a night in custody. He looked up as the door opened, his expression cycling rapidly from hope to wariness as he saw me. "Emma." My name on his lips sounded different now. Hollow. Performative. "Thank God. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. My parents, they—" "5 minutes," Detective Marshall interrupted, positioning herself by the door as Olivia took a position slightly behind me. "Ms. Cooper has requested a brief meeting for personal closure. This conversation is being recorded." Nathan's practiced charm faltered momentarily before reasserting itself. "Of course. Emma, sweetheart. I can explain everything. My parents acted without my knowledge. I'm as shocked as you are. If you'll just—" "Pacific Northwest Banking," I interrupted, my voice steady. 6 properties. $4 million in underwater mortgages. Your parents didn't do that alone this morning." His expression flickered, the briefest flash of calculation replacing the manufactured concern. I'd seen that micro-expression before, but had always dismissed it as thoughtfulness. Now I recognized it for what it was: the constant recalibration of a practiced con artist. "A misunderstanding," he repeated, leaning forward with practiced earnestness. "My father sometimes gets carried away with investment opportunities." He meant well. "Like Rebecca Winters?" I asked quietly. The name landed like a physical blow. Nathan jerked back slightly, all pretense momentarily abandoned. "What did Sophia tell you?" "Enough." I maintained eye contact, refusing to flinch. The life insurance policy was a particularly interesting detail. "That was a standard financial precaution," he recovered quickly. "Rebecca was unstable, threatened self-harm regularly. Ask anyone." "I intend to," I assured him, "along with your other ex-wives, all of whom share remarkably similar financial histories, successful before you, devastated after." "Emma, please." He switched tactics, reaching across the table toward my hand. I pulled back before he could touch me. "We can work through this. Everything I did was for us, for our future." "There is no us, Nathan. There never was." The calm certainty in my voice surprised even me. There was a target and a predator. A mark and a con. I understand that now. You're upset, confused. My mother has always been overbearing, I know, but stop. The command emerged sharper than intended. I didn't come here for explanations or excuses. I came to tell you one thing. He waited. That calculated patience I'd once mistaken for understanding, now transparent in its manipulation. You failed, I said simply. Your parents failed. The scheme failed. I'm still standing, still solvent, and now, thanks to your miscalculation, equipped, with everything needed to ensure you can never do this to anyone else. Emma? My name sounds like a lie when you say it, I interrupted. Don't pretend you know me. You never did. You knew my financial profile, my credit score, my property value. But you missed something fundamental about who I am. What's that? He asked, the pretense of innocence giving way to something colder, more authentic. I don't break, I told him, standing to leave. I rebuild, and you've given me the perfect foundation for that, the truth. However painful, it's infinitely more valuable than the beautiful lies you sold me. Detective Marshall opened the door, signaling the end of our allotted time. As I turned to leave, Nathan made one final attempt. They'll never believe you, he called after me. We're a respected family, pillars of the community. It's your word against ours. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the stranger who had shared my bed, my home, my life. No, Nathan. It's your actions against the truth, and actions always reveal themselves eventually. The door closed on his response, severing the final thread of connection between us. In the hallway, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, months of tension releasing in a single moment of clarity. You okay? Olivia asked, her hand supportive on my shoulder. Better than I expected, I admitted, surprised to discover it was true. There's something freeing about seeing the deception clearly. No more second-guessing or rationalizing. Detective Marshall nodded approvingly. That kind of clarity is invaluable for witnesses. Speaking of which, we'd like to take your formal statement now, incorporating the new information about the mortgage fraud and what you've learned from Sophia Mitchell. As we followed her back toward the investigation division, my phone rang again. Marcus from Horizon Financial. I should take this, I told them, stepping aside. It could impact my professional standing. Emma, Marcus began without preamble. The board has reversed their decision. No administrative leave. What changed? I asked, surprised by the sudden shift. Pacific Northwest Banking contacted us directly. Apparently, their fraud team was impressed with how quickly you identified and reported the activity. Said your actions prevented millions in potential fraud losses. His voice carried genuine admiration. Plus, 3 of your clients called to express explicit confidence in your handling of the situation. The Hunter family was particularly vocal. The Hunters, my longest-standing clients, who had built their wealth through careful protection against exactly the kind of schemes Nathan's family had attempted. Their support meant everything. So I'm cleared to return to work? I confirmed, relief washing through me. One piece of my life reclaimed. More than cleared, Marcus replied. The board is suggesting you develop a client education program on identifying and preventing financial exploitation. Your expertise has suddenly become extremely relevant. After ending the call, I rejoined Detective Marshall and Olivia, sharing the unexpected development. Professional reputation intact, Olivia noted with satisfaction. That's one significant win. The first of many, Detective Marshall added with professional confidence. Ms. Cooper, based on the evidence we've gathered and the statements from multiple financial institutions, we're pursuing maximum charges against all 3 Mitchells. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, forgery, financial exploitation, the complete spectrum. We're also reopening the investigation into Rebecca Winter's disappearance. What happens now? I asked, the practical question grounding me in immediate next steps rather than the overwhelming whole. Now, Detective Marshall said, guiding us toward the conference room where Sophia waited, we build the strongest possible case. Your statement, combined with physical evidence and financial documentation, will form the foundation. Ms. Mitchell's historical evidence provides crucial context showing pattern and intent. Sophia looked up as we entered, her expression both weary and determined, the face of someone fighting a long battle who suddenly, unexpectedly, sees the possibility of victory on the horizon. They showed me what they found in your house, she said without preamble. The detailed profiles of potential future targets, your neighbors, your colleagues, your clients. They were planning to expand significantly, using your professional connections as leverage. Using me as their gateway to an entirely new class of victims, I concluded, the scope of their ambition becoming clear. Exactly. Detective Marshall indicated the evidence boards, where photos of my neighbors and colleagues were pinned alongside financial assessments. Your intervention hasn't just protected yourself, Ms. Cooper. It's potentially saved dozens of others from similar exploitation. The perspective shift was subtle but profound, from victim to protector, from mark to shield. Something settled in my chest, a sense of purpose emerging from the chaos of betrayal. I want to help, I said, looking between Detective Marshall and Sophia. Not just with my statement, but with whatever comes next. The prosecution, the warnings to potential victims, the education to prevent this from happening to others. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say, Detective Marshall replied, gesturing toward the conference table where dozens of files awaited our attention, because we have a lot of work ahead of us. As I took a seat beside Sophia, a strange sense of kinship formed between us. Two women connected not by the family ties Nathan had promised, but by the shared experience of betrayal and the mutual commitment to justice that had emerged from it. Before we start, Sophia said quietly, so only I could hear, I want you to know something. What they took from you, what they took from all of us, it wasn't just money or property or credit. Trust, I supplied, understanding immediately. Security. Peace of mind. Yes, and those things can feel impossible to rebuild. She met my eyes directly. But they're not. I'm living proof. 6 years later, I have my own business again, my own home, my own life, separate from their shadow. You will too. The simple assurance, from the only person who truly understood the unique pain of this particular betrayal, settled something restless inside me. Not healing, not yet, but the prospect of it. The promise that this acute pain would eventually dull into something manageable, perhaps even transformative. For the next several hours, we worked methodically through statements and evidence, my financial expertise proving invaluable in tracking the complex web of transactions the Mitchell family had woven. With each document, each clarification, each connection revealed, I reclaimed a piece of my professional identity, no longer a victim with financial knowledge, but a financial expert actively combating victimization. As evening approached, Detective Marshall called a break, acknowledging our collective fatigue. We've made excellent progress. The foundation is solid. Tomorrow we'll continue with additional witness statements and financial record analysis. What about my house? I asked, the practical question of where I would stay suddenly pressing as fatigue set in. Still an active investigation scene, she confirmed. Another 24-48 hours at minimum. Do you have arrangements? She's staying with me, Olivia confirmed before I could respond. Secure building, doorman, private access. As we gathered our belongings to leave, my phone alerted me to another security notification from my home system. Unlike the previous alert showing police activity, this one was different. Movement in the basement storage area, a zone rarely triggered. Detective, I said, showing her the alert. Someone's in my house, in the basement. She immediately reached for her phone, barking orders to officers on scene. Check the basement storage immediately. Possible unauthorized access. We watched the live feed as uniformed officers approached the basement stairs, weapons drawn. The camera angle showed only a partial view of the storage area, but movement was clearly visible, someone shifting items, searching for something. "Can you zoom in?" Detective Marshall asked, peering at my phone. I expanded the image, the quality degrading but still clear enough to identify the figure. Diana Mitchell, somehow back at my house despite being transferred to county holding. "How did she—" I began, but Detective Marshall was already on her radio again, demanding verification of Diana Mitchell's location. The response came seconds later. "Confirmed secured at county, checked personally 5 minutes ago." Then, "Who?" I trailed off as the figure turned, her face becoming clear in the security footage. "Patricia Lawson," Sophia identified immediately. "Diana's sister. They could be twins." On the screen, Patricia continued searching, eventually locating what she sought, a hidden panel behind the water heater that I hadn't even known existed. From it, she removed what appeared to be a document case. "Stop her," I urged as she headed for the stairs. "Whatever that is." "Already on it," Detective Marshall assured me, her voice tight with controlled urgency. We watched as officers intercepted Patricia at the top of the stairs, the document case falling from her hands as they detained her. One officer retrieved it, opening it to reveal stacks of paperwork, flash drives. We watched in stunned silence as officers opened the document case Patricia had retrieved from my basement. Detective Marshall immediately ordered it brought to the station, her expression shifting from professional calm to intense focus. "The officer is photographing everything before moving it," she explained, watching the feed. "Standard evidence. Procedure." "How did she get into my house?" I asked, still struggling to process what we'd witnessed. "I thought it was secured as a crime scene." "That's the first question she'll be answering," Detective Marshall assured me, already dialing another extension. "I need a complete security review of the Cooper residence immediately. Unauthorized access just documented." "Yes? In custody now?" 20 minutes later, Patricia Lawson sat in an interview room, her resemblance to Diana truly startling. The same imperious posture, the same calculated expressions, though where Diana projected polished charm, Patricia carried a harder edge, less concerned with appearances. "Family business," she repeated for the third time, responding to Detective Marshall's questioning about her presence in my home. "Nothing criminal about retrieving family documents." "From a secured crime scene?" Detective Marshall clarified, her tone neutral but unyielding. "Using an unauthorized key, accessing a hidden compartment unknown to the homeowner." Patricia's gaze flicked briefly to me, dismissive. "The homeowner's awareness is irrelevant. George installed that compartment when they first targeted the property. Standard operating procedure." The casual admission stunned everyone in the observation room where Olivia, Sophia, and I watched the interview. Patricia seemed entirely unconcerned about incriminating herself or her family members. "Did she just—" Olivia began. "Confess to premeditated fraud?" Sophia finished. "Yes, that's Patricia. Always thought she was the smartest person in any room, too clever to bother with pretense." Detective Marshall maintained her professional demeanor despite the unexpected candor. "To clarify, you're stating that George Mitchell installed a hidden storage area in Ms. Cooper's home specifically as part of a plan to secure valuable documents. Obviously," Patricia interrupted. "Every successful family needs secure storage for important records. And these records would include—" Detective Marshall gestured toward the document case, now being cataloged by evidence technicians visible through the observation window. Patricia shrugged. Financial paperwork, investment records, nothing that concerns your department. I believe that determination is ours to make, Detective Marshall replied evenly, given that we've already identified multiple instances of forgery, fraud, and identity theft. For the first time, Patricia's composure wavered slightly. Those accusations are between family members, civil matters, not criminal. Financial crimes across multiple jurisdictions involving numerous victims are decidedly criminal matters, Ms. Lawson, Detective Marshall corrected. Now, about the contents of that hidden compartment. I want a lawyer, Patricia announced abruptly, her strategy visibly shifting. And immunity, before I say another word. Detective Marshall simply nodded, unsurprised. That's your right. Though I should mention that the FBI Financial Crimes Unit has expressed significant interest in this case given its interstate components. Their immunity offers tend to be quite limited once they're involved. The mention of federal involvement landed visibly on Patricia, her confident facade cracking further. FBI? Diana said local authorities wouldn't pursue this beyond basic charges. Diana was mistaken, Detective Marshall replied simply, standing to leave. An officer will provide you with contact information for public defenders, or you're welcome to call your own attorney. She exited the interview room, joining us in the observation area moments later. That was unexpected. The confession or the FBI mention? I asked. Both, actually. Patricia Lawson has now directly connected your case to a larger pattern of premeditated fraud, which strengthens our position considerably. She glanced through the glass where Patricia sat ramrod straight, her expression calculating. As for the FBI, they contacted us this afternoon after the Pacific Northwest. Banking report flagged interstate activity. They're sending agents tomorrow. Sophia leaned forward. Will that help or complicate prosecution? Both, Detective Marshall admitted. Federal charges carry heavier penalties, which works in our favor. But federal prosecutors might focus on the largest financial crimes while dropping smaller local charges. It's a trade-off. What about the documents she retrieved? I asked, watching technicians carefully photographing and cataloging papers from the case. Initial assessment suggests they're records of previous schemes, Detective Marshall explained. Names, financial profiles, transaction histories, essentially a playbook documenting their methods and victims. A smoking gun, Olivia observed, her attorney's assessment cutting to the heart of the matter. More like an entire arsenal, Detective Marshall agreed. Ms. Cooper, it appears your home was being used as a central repository for evidence of their activities. The hidden compartment contained documentation going back nearly 15 years. The revelation that my home, my sanctuary, had been selected as a storage facility for their criminal enterprise intensified the violation I felt. They hadn't just invaded my space. They'd deliberately chosen it, planned for it, before I'd even met Nathan. Was I specifically targeted? I asked, the question I'd been avoiding since discovering Nathan's betrayal. Or was I just convenient? Detective Marshall exchanged a glance with Sophia before answering carefully. The evidence suggests both. Your financial profile made you an attractive target, but the selection process appears to have been methodical rather than opportunistic. We found detailed research on several potential candidates, with your file marked as primary objective. Because of my career? I pressed, needing to understand. Partially, she confirmed. Your position at Horizon Financial offered access to high-value clients, which represented a significant expansion opportunity for their operation. But there were other factors noted as well. Your property, your credit rating, and particularly, your independent status with limited family connections. The clinical assessment of my vulnerabilities, especially the notation of my limited family ties, felt like a fresh wound. They had seen my deepest longing for connection and calculated exactly how to exploit it. What happens now? I asked, forcing myself to focus on practical next steps rather than the emotional devastation. We process the new evidence, continue interviewing witnesses, and coordinate with the FBI on jurisdiction, Detective Marshall explained. Meanwhile, I strongly recommend you remain at a secure location. Patricia's presence at your home indicates they may have other associates we haven't yet identified. She stays with me, Olivia confirmed immediately. Good. We'll maintain the security detail at your residence, Ms. Reynolds, as a precaution. Detective Marshall gathered her notes. One more thing, Ms. Cooper. The document case contained several flash drives currently being analyzed by our tech team. Initial review shows extensive financial data, including what appears to be a complete record of transactions related to their schemes. My professional experience might help with interpreting those, I offered, seizing the opportunity to contribute actively rather than remaining a passive victim. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say, Detective Marshall responded with the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. Our financial analysts could use expert assistance, especially regarding some of the more complex investment structures they've identified. The request to apply my professional skills to the investigation offered something I desperately needed: a sense of agency amid the chaos, a way to reclaim my expertise from those who had tried to weaponize it against me. I'll help, however I can, I promised. As we prepared to leave the station, my phone buzzed with yet another notification. Not from my home security system this time, but from my email. A message from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, "Important information." Regarding Mitchell Family Investments, I opened it cautiously, showing the screen to Detective Marshall. "To whom it may concern," the message began formally. "My name is Eleanor Winters, mother of Rebecca Winters. I have been following news reports regarding the Mitchell family's arrest. If Rebecca's case is being reopened, I have documentation she left with me before her disappearance. Please contact me at your earliest convenience." Detective Marshall read the message twice, her expression carefully neutral. "Perfect timing." "Too perfect?" Sophia asked skeptically. "Possibly," Detective Marshall admitted. "But we'll verify the sender's identity before proceeding. If legitimate, this could be significant." "Rebecca was convinced they would come after her," Sophia said quietly. "She told me that right after filing for divorce. Said she had evidence but needed to hide it somewhere they wouldn't look. With her mother," I suggested. The parallel to my own situation, evidence hidden where perpetrators wouldn't think to search, striking me forcefully. "We'll investigate thoroughly," Detective Marshall assured us. "For now, focus on resting and preparing for tomorrow's sessions with our financial analysts." The drive to Olivia's condo passed in contemplative silence, both of us processing the day's revelations. The scope of the case had expanded exponentially from what had begun as unauthorized renovations to my kitchen. Now it involved multiple victims across several states, potentially federal charges, and the reopening of a suspicious disappearance, possibly worse. "You holding up okay?" Olivia asked as we entered her building, nodding to the security guard who had clearly been briefed about watching for unfamiliar faces. "Surprisingly, yes," I admitted. "Having concrete actions to take helps. Contributing my expertise to the investigation gives me something to focus on beyond just being a victim." "That's the Emma I know," she said with approval. "Always turning challenges into opportunities for contribution." In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of the bone-deep exhaustion that came from navigating constant emotional and intellectual challenges. "What if I'm making a mistake?" I asked abruptly, voicing the doubt that had been nibbling at the edges of my confidence. What if Nathan really didn't know the extent of his parents' schemes? What if— "Stop," Olivia interrupted gently. "That's exactly what they want. Your doubt, your second-guessing. The evidence is overwhelming, Emma. Nathan wasn't an innocent bystander. He was a central strategist. Your financial expertise is telling you that, even if your heart is still catching up. She was right. The analytical part of my brain had already processed the evidence and reached its conclusion. It was only the emotional residue of 3 years of marriage that created these moments of uncertainty. I know, I sighed as the elevator doors opened. It's just hard to accept that someone could maintain such an elaborate deception for so long. That everything, every conversation, every shared experience, every intimate moment was calculated. Not everything was necessarily fake, Olivia suggested as we entered her condo. Manipulators often incorporate genuine elements to make their deceptions more convincing. But the underlying purpose, that was never authentic. The distinction offered cold comfort. Whether Nathan had occasionally felt real affection amid his calculated exploitation changed nothing about the fundamental betrayal. I need to focus on what comes next, I decided, setting my bag down with purpose. The financial analysis, the case building, the protection of potential future victims. And your own rebuilding, Olivia added gently. You get to reclaim your life too, Emma. Not just help with the investigation. The reminder that I had a future beyond this crisis, that I would eventually need to reconstruct my personal life, not just my professional one, hit with unexpected force. The thought of dating again, of trusting anyone with my heart or finances, seemed impossibly distant. One day at a time, I murmured, more to myself than to Olivia. Starting with dinner and actual rest, she insisted, heading for her kitchen. You can't fight financial criminals on an empty stomach. The simple routine of sharing a meal and normal conversation provided a momentary respite from the intensity of the past days. We carefully avoided case discussion, focusing instead on memories from law school, mutual friends, and Olivia's ongoing renovation of her grandmother's lakeside cottage, a topic that once would have led naturally to discussion of my own home projects, but now carried uncomfortable associations. As I settled into the guest room later, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Board voted unanimously to proceed with your financial exploitation education program. Full resources and support. When you're ready to discuss, I'm here. The unexpected professional opportunity emerging from personal disaster struck me as profoundly fitting. The very expertise the Mitchells had targeted could now become a shield for others, a way to transform victimization into protection. Morning arrived with renewed purpose. I'd spent part of the night reviewing financial fraud cases from my professional training, refreshing concepts and terminologies that might prove useful in analyzing the Mitchell family's schemes. If my knowledge could help build a stronger case, perhaps some meaning could be salvaged from the wreckage of my personal life. Olivia drove us to the station, where increased activity signaled the case's expanding scope. 2 individuals in FBI windbreakers conferred with Detective Marshall in the main investigation area, while technical analysts huddled around computer screens displaying financial flowcharts of dizzying complexity. Ms. Cooper, Detective Marshall greeted me, introducing the federal agents. Special Agents Keller and Washington, Financial Crimes Division. They're particularly interested in your professional insights regarding the investment structures documented on the recovered flash drives. Agent Washington, a precisely dressed woman with analytical eyes, extended her hand. Your background in financial advising provides valuable context we've been missing. The Mitchells created elaborate labyrinths to obscure their money movements. Happy to help however I can, I replied, following them to a conference room where multiple screens displayed financial diagrams. We've identified 7 distinct investment schemes over the past decade, Agent Keller explained, a compact man whose casual demeanor contrasted with his partner's formality. Each followed similar patterns but with evolving sophistication. The most recent, the one targeting your assets, represents their most complex structure yet. For the next several hours, I immersed myself in financial forensics, applying my professional training to unravel the tangled web of accounts, investments, and transfers the Mitchell family had constructed. The work was intellectually demanding, but oddly satisfying, like solving a particularly challenging puzzle with real-world consequences. They used nested LLCs to obscure ownership, I noted, tracing a particularly convoluted series of transactions. Each entity owned by another, in a circular pattern that makes determining ultimate control deliberately difficult. Exactly, Agent Washington confirmed, making notes. Can you explain the significance of these particular investment vehicles? They appear repeatedly in different schemes. I examined the structures highlighted on her screen. These are typically used for legitimate tax planning, but they've been repurposed for obfuscation. By creating these specific tiers of ownership, they've essentially built a shell game where assets appear to be securely invested, but can be quietly liquidated through these back channels. And would an average victim recognize this pattern? Agent Keller asked. No, I admitted. Even most financial professionals would need specialized forensic training to identify these mechanisms without seeing the complete structure. Each individual component appears legitimate in isolation, which explains how they've evaded detection for so long, Agent Washington concluded. Even their victims believed they'd made poor investment choices rather than recognizing the systematic fraud. As we broke for lunch, Detective Marshall joined us with an update on Patricia Lawson's status. She's requesting a formal immunity deal in exchange for comprehensive testimony against Diana, George, and Nathan. What's your recommendation? Agent Washington asked. Limited immunity for specific charges, contingent on full cooperation and verifiable information, Detective Marshall replied. Her involvement appears less extensive than the primary three, but she was definitely aware of their activities and potentially involved in evidence concealment, I added, recalling her retrieval attempt at my home. Precisely, Detective Marshall agreed. We're negotiating terms now. Meanwhile, we've verified the identity of Eleanor Winters. She is indeed Rebecca's mother, and she's agreed to travel here with the documentation she mentioned. The continued expansion of the case created conflicting emotions. Satisfaction that the full scope of the Mitchells' crimes would be exposed, alongside discomfort at being part of such a public scandal. My name would inevitably be associated. With this case, my professional reputation temporarily linked to victimization rather than expertise. Something troubling you? Agent Washington asked perceptively as we returned to the financial analysis. Professional concerns, I admitted. My career has been built on helping clients make sound financial decisions. Being publicly identified as someone who missed these red flags in my own life actually strengthens your credibility, she countered immediately. The Mitchells fooled financial institutions, real estate professionals, and investors across multiple states. Your ability to recognize and analyze their methods now, despite personal involvement, demonstrates exceptional professional capacity. The perspective shift was helpful, reframing my experience as specialized knowledge rather than embarrassing vulnerability. Perhaps Marcus had been right about the educational program. My first-hand understanding of these schemes offered insights theoretical training couldn't provide. As afternoon progressed, we identified a pattern in the Mitchells' victim selection that proved particularly disturbing. They specifically targeted financially successful individuals with limited family connections, I noted, reviewing the victim profiles recovered from my home. People whose social isolation made them less likely to have others reviewing their financial decisions. People like you, Agent Keller observed gently. Yes, I acknowledged, the pattern painfully clear in retrospect. Professional success combined with personal vulnerability. The perfect targets. And your connection to Horizon Financial represented their most ambitious expansion yet, Agent Washington added, pulling up another document. These appear to be detailed profiles of your clients, categorized by potential value and approachability. The sight of my client list, people who had trusted me with their financial futures, organized into exploitation categories by the Mitchell family, made me physically ill. They hadn't just targeted me, they'd planned to use me as a gateway to dozens of others. I'd like a copy of that list, I requested, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to ensure these individuals receive appropriate warnings about potential targeting. Of course, Agent Washington agreed, though we'll need to coordinate the timing with your firm's compliance department to avoid creating panic. We worked until early evening, creating comprehensive maps of the Mitchells' financial structures and victim profiles. My professional expertise proved valuable in identifying mechanisms that might have otherwise escaped notice, while the FBI agent's investigative experience contextualized these findings within larger criminal patterns. One final document for today, Agent Keller said, pulling up a spreadsheet labeled Contingency Liquidation Plan. We're having trouble determining the purpose of these specific transfers. I studied the document, my financial training immediately recognizing its implications. This is an exit strategy, a plan for rapidly converting assets to untraceable funds and disappearing if their schemes were discovered. Like life insurance policies, Agent Washington suggested, making the connection to Rebecca Winter's case. Exactly, but also real. A state with inflated values, cryptocurrency holdings, and offshore accounts, I explained, pointing to specific entries. These aren't just contingency plans, they're actively funded escape mechanisms. Agent Keller leaned forward. Are you saying they've already established the means to disappear? Not just established, fully funded, I confirmed, the realization chilling. Based on these balances, they could vanish tomorrow with millions in untraceable assets. The question is, why haven't they? The room fell silent as the implications settled over us. Despite having sophisticated escape mechanisms in place, the Mitchell family had remained to pursue additional schemes, including the attempted mortgage fraud detected just yesterday. They thought they were untouchable, Detective Marshall suggested, having joined us for this final review. Years of successful operations without consequences built overconfidence. Or they needed one final score, Agent Washington countered. Something big enough to justify abandoning their established operation. The suggestion triggered a memory from my conversations with Nathan about future plans. The Westlake Revival Project, I said suddenly. George mentioned it when explaining why they needed my house as collateral. He described it as their most ambitious development yet. Agent Keller was already typing, pulling up property records. Westlake Revival Project. Here it is. Proposed luxury development on prime lakefront property. Estimated investment requirement, $30 million. That's far beyond their previous schemes, Agent Washington noted, examining the documentation. Because it wasn't a scheme, I realized, the pieces clicking into place. At least not entirely. They were using fraudulently obtained funds to finance a legitimate development that would establish them permanently as respected developers. The ultimate legitimization of their criminal activities. Laundering their ill-gotten gains through a high-profile legitimate project, Agent Keller concluded. Classic endgame for successful financial criminals. And my assets were meant to provide the final piece of financing they needed, I added. The scope of their plan becoming clear. My home equity, my professional connections, my client relationships, all leveraged for their last big score before going legitimate. Detective Marshall's phone buzzed with an urgent message. She read it quickly, her expression tightening. Speaking of legitimization efforts, Diana Mitchell's attorney has just issued a public statement characterizing this entire investigation as a family financial misunderstanding being criminalized by overzealous authorities. They're taking this public? Agent Washington asked, surprised. That's unusually aggressive for financial fraud defendants. Diana Mitchell has always favored offense as defense, Detective Marshall explained, and their social standing in Lakeside gives them a platform some defendants wouldn't have. How will this affect the case? I asked, concerned about the potential for public opinion to be swayed by the Mitchell family's community connections. Minimally in legal terms, Agent Keller assured me. The evidence speaks for itself. but it does mean you should be prepared for public scrutiny and potential community division. Financial crimes don't generate the same universal condemnation as violent offenses. The warning was unnecessary. I'd already begun considering the broader implications of my role in exposing a prominent local family. Lakeside was a small community where the Mitchells had cultivated an image of respectability for decades. Some would inevitably question my account, especially given Diana's skill at manipulating perceptions. I should make a statement too, I decided. Not about case specifics, but addressing my professional role and commitment to protecting clients from financial exploitation. Actually, Detective Marshall began thoughtfully, there might be a more effective approach. The evidence we've gathered suggests the Mitchells have victimized dozens of individuals across multiple communities. If several victims came forward, together. Strength in numbers, Agent Washington nodded approvingly. And it shifts the narrative from isolated accusation to pattern of behavior. Sophia would participate, I said immediately, and potentially others, if approached. Carefully. We'll coordinate with the prosecutor's office, Detective Marshall confirmed. For now, focus on the financial analysis. Your professional insights are our strongest asset in understanding the full scope of their operations. As we concluded, for the day, I felt simultaneously exhausted and energized. The intellectual engagement of analyzing complex financial schemes had provided distraction from the emotional trauma, while the prospect of collaboratively confronting the Mitchells' public narrative offered a path toward reclaiming my own story. One more development before you go, Detective Marshall mentioned as Olivia arrived to drive me back to her condo. Eleanor Winters will be here tomorrow afternoon with Rebecca's documentation. Given your financial expertise, we'd appreciate your participation in that meeting. Of course, I agreed, both curious and apprehensive about what Rebecca might have documented before her disappearance. The drive back to Olivia's condo was quiet, both of us processing the day's developments. The evolving case had expanded beyond my personal experience to encompass a sprawling financial crime network with implications for dozens of victims. Yet somehow, this broader context made my individual trauma feel more manageable rather than more overwhelming. You seem different today, Olivia observed as we entered her building. More centered. Applying my professional skills to the investigation helps, I admitted. It creates distance between me as the victim and me as the financial expert. Gives me perspective. And purpose, she added perceptively. You're not just helping build a case, you're reclaiming your expertise from those who tried to weaponize it. The observation resonated deeply. Though the Mitchells had attempted to exploit my financial knowledge for their schemes, that same knowledge was now becoming their undoing. There was profound satisfaction in that symmetry. Diana's public statement concerns me, though, I confessed as we entered her condo. She's skilled at shaping narratives, and the community has known their family for generations. Which is precisely why your counter-narrative matters, Olivia argued, setting her briefcase down with emphasis. Not just for the legal case, but for your own healing and future in Lakeside, if you let Diana control the story. She wins even if she loses the legal battle, I finished, understanding the stakes. The court of public opinion matters too. Exactly. And unlike Diana, you have the advantage of absolute truth on your side. Olivia's confidence in this simple fact was reassuring. My phone buzzed with a notification, not from the security system or case developments this time, but from a local news app. The headline made my stomach drop. Prominent Lakeside family faces overzealous prosecution in financial dispute. The accompanying photo showed Diana Mitchell outside the county courthouse, perfectly composed in a conservative suit, projecting dignified concern rather than defensive hostility. The calculated image management was masterful, presenting herself as the reasonable victim of procedural overreach rather than the architect of sophisticated fraud. She's good, Olivia acknowledged, reading over my shoulder. But she's forgetting something important. What's that? The actual evidence, Olivia replied simply. Public relations strategies can't erase financial records, forged documents, or sworn testimony from multiple victims. But they can influence how those things are perceived, I countered, scrolling through comments already forming beneath the article. Some expressing skepticism about the charges, others citing the Mitchell family's long-standing community contributions. True, which is why your voice matters in this narrative. Olivia took my phone gently, closing the news app. But not tonight. Tonight is for rest and preparation for tomorrow's sessions. She was right, of course. Engaging with public speculation would only deplete energy better reserved for the actual investigation. The evidence would ultimately speak for itself, regardless of Diana's media strategy. As I prepared for bed, however, another notification appeared. This one from Sophia. Saw Diana's press offensive. Already contacted 3 other victims willing to speak publicly about their experiences. We're building our own coalition. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start changing the narrative. The message offered surprising comfort. I wasn't facing this alone, wasn't solely responsible for countering the Mitchells' carefully crafted public image. Other voices would join mine, creating a chorus of truth too powerful to dismiss as misunderstanding or overreaction. For the first time since discovering the demolition crew in my kitchen, I fell asleep without anxiety about what the next day might bring. The path forward remained challenging, but it was increasingly clear, not just surviving the Mitchells' schemes, but actively exposing them, not just reclaiming my own narrative, but helping others reclaim theirs as well. In the darkest hour of the night, I awakened briefly, a realization crystallizing with unexpected clarity. Diana Mitchell had been right about one thing. Family does matter. But true family isn't defined by legal ties or shared names. It's built through mutual respect, honesty, and support during life's most challenging moments. By that definition, I wasn't as alone as the Mitchells had calculated. Between Olivia's unwavering advocacy, Sophia's shared understanding, Marcus's professional support, and the growing coalition of fellow survivors, I was developing something stronger than the false family Nathan had promised. Authentic connections based on truth rather than exploitation. That revelation, more than any legal strategy or financial analysis, felt like the first real step toward genuine healing. Morning arrived with unexpected clarity. I woke before Olivia's alarm, my mind already organizing the day ahead. The continued financial analysis, the meeting with Eleanor Winters, the coordinated response to Diana's public relations offensive. The analytical part of my brain had taken command, providing structure amid chaos. Over coffee, Olivia outlined our day's legal strategy, while I reviewed notes from yesterday's financial discoveries. The complex web of shell companies and circular ownership structures the Mitchells had created was impressive in its sophistication, a perverse testament to their intelligence and dedication. If only they'd applied such skills to legitimate business ventures. Ready for round 2 with the financial crimes team? Olivia asked as we prepared to leave. More than ready, I confirmed. Yesterday was about understanding their methods. Today is about tracing the money. The Lakeside Police Station hummed with increased activity. Additional FBI personnel had arrived overnight, transforming the investigation room into something resembling a federal command center. Computer. Specialists worked alongside financial analysts, while evidence technicians continued processing materials from the hidden compartment in my home. Agent Washington greeted us with characteristic efficiency. Ms. Cooper, we've made significant progress mapping the Mitchell family's financial network based on your insights yesterday. Today, we'd like to focus on tracing funds from victim to end destination. The money trail, I nodded, understanding immediately. Following transactions through their laundering processes to identify recoverable assets. Exactly. she confirmed, leading us to a conference room where multiple computer screens displayed transaction flowcharts of dizzying complexity. We've identified approximately $28 million moving through their various schemes over the past decade. The question is, where did it ultimately go? For the next several hours, I immersed myself in financial forensics, applying my professional training to unravel elaborate money laundering mechanisms. The Mitchells had utilized a sophisticated combination of real estate transactions, privately held companies, and international transfers to obscure the movement of fraudulently obtained funds. They converted most liquid assets to physical property, I noted, identifying a pattern across multiple schemes, primarily through these three development companies in different states. Classic layering technique, Agent Keller agreed, joining us mid-morning. But they added an unusual twist by deliberately failing certain projects while succeeding with others. Calculated failures, I realized, examining the pattern more closely. The Aurora Tower collapse wasn't an accident or genuine business failure. It was designed to fail at a specific point, creating explainable losses that disguised fund extractions, Agent Washington concluded. Ingenious, if utterly unethical. And nearly impossible to detect without seeing the complete pattern, I added. Each individual project would appear to be a legitimate business venture with standard market risks. As we broke for lunch, Detective Marshall arrived with updates on the public response to Diana's media campaign. Local opinion is divided. The Mitchells have substantial community connections, and Diana's narrative of family financial misunderstanding is gaining traction in certain circles. Any progress on the coordinated victim statement? I asked, concerned about the potential impact on the case if public sentiment shifted too far in the Mitchells' favor. Sophia has identified 5 individuals willing to speak publicly, Detective Marshall confirmed. The prosecutor's office is scheduling a press conference for tomorrow afternoon. They'd like you to participate, if you're comfortable doing so. The prospect of publicly identifying myself as a victim of financial exploitation, standing before cameras and community members who knew me professionally, created immediate anxiety. Yet the alternative, allowing Diana's narrative to go unchallenged, seemed worse. I'll do it, I decided. But I want to focus on the educational aspects, warning signs, protection strategies, resource availability, rather than just my personal experience. Perfect approach, Detective Marshall approved. Positions you as an expert who experienced victimization rather than just a victim. Maintains your professional standing while supporting the case. The distinction was subtle but crucial for my long-term recovery and professional reputation. If I could transform this experience into educational value for others, it would reclaim purpose from pain. Our afternoon session was interrupted by the arrival of Eleanor Winters, Rebecca's mother. A dignified woman in her 70s, she carried herself with the careful composure of someone who had lived with grief for years. "Ms. Cooper," she greeted me with unexpected warmth. "Rebecca would have appreciated your courage. She always said, the Mitchells would eventually target someone who wouldn't back down." The connection to a woman I'd never met but whose fate might have foreshadowed my own created an instant bond. "I'm so sorry about your daughter." "Thank you," she acknowledged simply. "But I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because Rebecca prepared for this day, even if she didn't live to see it." From her handbag, she removed a sealed envelope and a small external hard drive. After filing for divorce from Nathan, Rebecca became increasingly concerned about her safety. She gave me these with specific instructions. If anything happened to her, I should keep them secure until the Mitchells faced legal scrutiny for financial crimes. Detective Marshall accepted the items with careful procedure, documenting the chain of custody while Eleanor provided a formal statement about their provenance. Rebecca was meticulous about documentation, Eleanor explained as the detective opened the envelope, revealing a handwritten letter and several USB drives. She said Nathan had taught her the importance of keeping records, ironically, a lesson she ultimately used against him. The letter, dated 3 weeks before Rebecca's disappearance, was addressed to whomever is building a case against the Mitchell family. Its opening paragraph sent chills through the room. If you're reading this, I am likely dead or missing. The documentation enclosed provides extensive evidence of financial crimes committed by Diana, George, and Nathan Mitchell from 2008-2015. It also contains proof that they have threatened my life for attempting to expose their schemes. I do not know if they will act on these threats, but I am taking precautions by securing this evidence beyond their reach. Detective Marshall continued reading aloud, her professional demeanor only slightly betraying the gravity of the contents. Rebecca had documented systematic fraud across multiple states, detailed Nathan's specific role in targeting financially viable spouses, and outlined the family's methods for silencing those who threatened exposure. The most dangerous moment, Rebecca had written, comes when you realize the truth and they realize you won't remain silent. They first attempt financial intimidation, then character assassination, then legal entanglement. If these fail, I believe, they are capable of more direct measures. Eleanor watched our reactions with the resigned expression of someone who had long suspected the worst. Rebecca called me the night before she disappeared, said she'd confronted Nathan with evidence of their schemes and demanded a legitimate divorce settlement that acknowledged their fraudulent use of her assets. The next day, her car was found abandoned near Lakeside Cliff. And the police concluded suicide, Agent Washington recalled from earlier discussions. Despite no history of suicidal ideation, no body ever recovered, and substantial life insurance policies recently purchased, Eleanor confirmed, her composed exterior cracking slightly. The investigating detective was persuaded that Rebecca had been making unfounded accusations against the respected Mitchell family due to emotional distress over the divorce. The parallels to the current situation, Diana's public relations campaign already characterizing me as emotionally unstable and the charges as overreactions, were impossible to ignore. "Mrs. Winters," I said carefully, "did Rebecca mention any specific evidence that might have emerged if a proper investigation had been conducted at the time?" Eleanor's expression sharpened with appreciation for the question. She believed Diana kept detailed records of all their operations. Said George was paranoid about being double-crossed and insisted on documenting everything. Ownership structures, transaction histories, even contingency plans. Like the hidden compartment in my basement, I realized aloud. They document extensively but secure the records where victims wouldn't think to look. Or where they believe they maintain control of access, Agent Keller added. Your home was selected not just as a target, but as a secure storage location they expected to manage through Nathan. The technical team required several hours to properly process Rebecca's digital evidence, following strict forensic protocols to ensure admissibility. While waiting, I continued working with Agent Washington on tracing the Mitchell family's assets through their labyrinthine financial structures. Based on transaction patterns, I estimate they've accumulated approximately $12 million in convertible assets, I concluded after analyzing multiple account trails. Primarily held in these 7 properties across 4 states, plus these offshore accounts, which they could liquidate quickly using the contingency plan we identified yesterday, Agent Washington noted, connecting the evidence streams. If they made bail, they could potentially disappear within 48 hours. That won't be happening, Detective Marshall interjected, joining our discussion. The judge has denied bail for all 3, citing flight risk based on the financial evidence you've helped analyze. They'll remain in custody throughout the prosecution. The news provided surprising relief. Though I'd maintained composure throughout the day's technical work, some part of me had continued to worry about potential retaliation if the Mitchells were released, particularly given Rebecca's documented concerns. "What about Patricia Lawson?" I asked, recalling Diana's sister who had attempted to retrieve documents from my home. Limited immunity deal accepted by the prosecutor, Detective Marshall reported. She's providing comprehensive testimony about her role in document concealment and her knowledge of previous schemes. Apparently, she's been the family's primary record keeper for years. Which explains why Diana needed her to retrieve the documentation from my house, I realized. Patricia would know exactly what was hidden there and how damaging it could be. Precisely, Detective Marshall confirmed. And her testimony corroborates much of what we've already discovered through financial analysis, creating multiple independent verification points for the prosecution. By late afternoon, the technical team had completed initial analysis of Rebecca's digital evidence, confirming its authenticity and relevance. The materials included meticulous documentation of the Mitchells' operations between 2008-2015, including transaction records, communication logs, and, most disturbingly, contingency plans for addressing potential exposure threats. These appear to be templates for character assassination, Agent Washington noted, displaying a document titled Credibility Mitigation Strategies. Pre-written narratives designed to undermine victims who threatened exposure. The document outlined systematic approaches for destroying the credibility of anyone who might expose their schemes, suggesting mental health concerns, fabricating evidence of financial irresponsibility, cultivating sympathetic professionals who could provide supporting opinions, and strategically releasing damaging information to community leaders. This is exactly what they're attempting with me now, I observed, recognizing Diana's current media strategy in the documented template. The press statements about family misunderstandings and emotional overreactions follow this playbook, precisely. Which means we can anticipate their next moves, Agent Keller noted. According to this progression, when initial credibility attacks fail, they escalate to more direct legal entanglements, frivolous lawsuits, professional complaints, regulatory challenges. Already happening, I confirmed, thinking of the complaint Diana had filed with Horizon Financial before her arrest. She questioned my professional judgment and ethical standards with my firm's compliance department. And the final escalation? Detective Marshall asked, though her expression suggested she already anticipated the answer. Agent Washington scrolled to the document's last section, labeled Terminal Contingencies. The clinical language couldn't disguise the sinister implications, strategies for arranging accidents, creating evidence of self-harm, or engineering disappearances that would resolve persistent exposure threats permanently. Eleanor Winters, who had remained to provide context for Rebecca's evidence, showed no surprise at these revelations. Rebecca knew, she said simply. She told me they would rather eliminate problems than leave loose ends. I believed her, but the authorities didn't. They will now, Detective Marshall assured her, the professional detachment in her voice thinner than usual. This documentation transforms the investigation from fraud charges to potential homicide. The sobering expansion of the case created a momentary silence in the room. What had begun as unauthorized kitchen renovations had evolved into financial fraud and was now potentially expanding to include premeditated murder. The escalation seemed almost unbelievable, except that each piece of evidence had built logically upon the last, creating an undeniable pattern too comprehensive to dismiss. I never imagined, I began, struggling to reconcile the Nathan. I thought I'd known with someone who might have been involved in a murder conspiracy. None of their victims did, Eleanor said gently. That was their greatest advantage, the absolute inconceivability of the truth. Respectable community members, generous donors, loving family, the perfect cover for methodical predators. The description captured the essence of what made the Mitchells so effectively dangerous. Their exploitation of social trust and community, standing to facilitate criminal enterprises that victims themselves struggled to believe even as they experienced them. We should proceed with the press conference as planned, Agent Washington decided, consulting with Detective Marshall. The public needs to understand the full scope of this operation, particularly with Diana's counter-narrative gaining traction. Agreed, Detective Marshall confirmed. Though given these new developments, we'll need to carefully consider which details are appropriate for public disclosure at this stage. I still want to participate, I affirmed, more convinced than ever of the importance of countering the Mitchells' narrative strategies. Other potential victims need warning, especially if the Mitchells have associates we haven't yet identified. As we concluded the day's sessions, Marcus called with updates from Horizon Financial. The firm is fully supporting your participation in tomorrow's press conference, he reported. The board believes taking a public stance against financial exploitation aligns with our fiduciary responsibilities to clients. That's a relief, I admitted. I was concerned about potential professional repercussions. Quite the opposite, Marcus assured me. The compliance department is developing enhanced protection protocols based on your analysis of the Mitchells' methods. Your experience is already strengthening our client safeguards. The transformation of personal trauma into institutional improvement offered unexpected satisfaction, my professional contribution continuing despite the Mitchells' attempts to undermine my career. And the education program we discussed? I asked, thinking of longer-term opportunities to create meaning from this experience. Green-lit for development as soon as you're ready, Marcus confirmed. Full budget approval and departmental support. The board sees significant value in offering clients protection against the exact methods you've helped expose. As Olivia drove us back to her condo, I found myself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion amid the ongoing stress and analytical focus of the investigation. Something approaching hope, not just for legal justice, but for genuine personal and professional recovery. You're unusually quiet, Olivia observed as we neared her building. Overwhelming day? Actually, the opposite, I admitted. For the first time, I'm seeing concrete possibilities beyond the immediate crisis. Professional opportunities, community education, genuine purpose emerging from all this. Olivia smiled with evident relief. That's the Emma I know, always. Finding growth opportunities in challenging circumstances. The Mitchells miscalculated, I realized, articulating the thought that had been forming since reviewing their victim selection patterns. They chose me because I appeared isolated, professionally successful but personally vulnerable. They didn't recognize that professional capabilities provide their own form of resilience. And community, Olivia added, gesturing between us. They underestimated the strength of relationships built on authentic connection rather than exploitation. The observation resonated deeply. Throughout this ordeal, genuine support had emerged from multiple directions. Olivia's unwavering advocacy, Sophia's shared understanding, Marcus's professional backing, even Eleanor Winter's validation of my experience through Rebecca's documented concerns. The Mitchells had calculated my isolation incorrectly, failing to distinguish between family quantity and relationship quality. At Olivia's condo, we spent the evening preparing for the next day's press conference, drafting talking points that balanced case facts with educational content, anticipating difficult questions, practicing responses that maintained composure, without sacrificing authenticity. Remember, Olivia advised as we refined my opening statement, you're not just a victim sharing a personal story. You're a financial professional providing expert insights on recognizing and preventing exploitation. Lead from that strength. The framing helped immensely, allowing me to approach the public appearance as a professional contribution rather than personal exposure. By positioning myself as an educator who had experienced victimization rather than merely a victim, I could maintain dignity while still acknowledging the reality of what had occurred. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. 6 victims now confirmed for tomorrow. United front. Diana's narrative doesn't stand a chance. The growing coalition provided additional confidence. Standing alone against the Mitchells' carefully crafted public image would have been daunting. Standing alongside multiple others with similar experiences created undeniable credibility through pattern recognition. "We should get some rest," Olivia suggested, noticing my fatigue despite my determined focus. "Tomorrow will require both emotional and intellectual stamina." She was right, of course. The press conference would demand careful navigation of factual presentation, emotional authenticity, and professional composure. A combination that required energy I was rapidly depleting after days of intensive investigation work. As I prepared for bed, however, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Cautious after recent experiences, I answered with Olivia present. "Ms. Cooper? Jennifer Walters from Pacific Northwest Banking Group," the now familiar voice greeted me. "I apologize for the late call, but we've discovered additional information you should be aware of before tomorrow's press conference." "What kind of information?" I asked, putting the call on speaker for Olivia's benefit. "We completed our internal investigation of the fraudulent mortgage applications submitted in your name," Jennifer explained. "In the process, we identified 7 previous cases with identical patterns involving the Mitchell family across 3 financial institutions." 7 additional victims? I clarified, reaching for a notepad. "Correct. And critically, all 7 incidents involved property transactions matching the templates discovered in your home. We've already provided this information to the FBI, but I wanted to ensure you were personally aware before making public statements." "I appreciate that," I said sincerely. "Will Pacific Northwest Banking be issuing its own statement about these findings?" "Yes, tomorrow morning. We've coordinated timing with the FBI to support the broader investigation announcement. Our statement explicitly acknowledges your role in identifying the pattern that led to these additional discoveries." After thanking her for the update and ending the call, I turned to Olivia with renewed determination. 7 more victims identified. The pattern keeps expanding. "Which further strengthens both the legal case and your public position," Olivia noted. "Each additional victim confirms the systematic nature of their operation and disproves Diana's family misunderstanding narrative." That night, preparing for sleep in the now familiar guest room of Olivia's condo, I found myself mentally drafting and redrafting my statement for tomorrow's press conference. The responsibility felt significant, not just for my own narrative reclamation, but for the broader public understanding of financial exploitation tactics that victimized vulnerable individuals with carefully calculated precision. Eleanor Winters. Words echoed in my thoughts. "Rebecca would have appreciated your courage. She always said the Mitchells would eventually target someone who wouldn't back down." Perhaps that was the final miscalculation in the Mitchells' otherwise meticulous planning. They had failed to recognize that professional success often requires persistence through setbacks, analytical problem-solving under pressure, and the capacity to rebuild after failures. The very qualities that made me financially attractive as a target also equipped me to respond effectively once their schemes were exposed. Tomorrow would mark a turning point, from private investigation to public accountability, from individual trauma to collective response, from reactive survival to proactive education. Whatever community judgment might follow, whatever professional adjustments might be required, whatever personal rebuilding remained necessary, one fundamental truth had emerged from the financial forensics and dedicated investigation. The Mitchells had not just targeted the wrong house or the wrong financial advisor, they had targeted the wrong woman entirely. The morning of the press conference dawned with crystalline clarity, Lake Michigan's surface a perfect mirror reflecting an impossible blue sky. Standing at Olivia's living room window, I found myself thinking about contrast, how the most beautiful days can coincide with life's most challenging moments, how devastating betrayal can ultimately lead to profound strength. "Ready for this?" Olivia asked, joining me with coffee mugs in hand. "As ready as possible," I replied, accepting the steaming cup gratefully. "The preparation helps. having talking points, anticipating questions. Just remember, you're speaking from professional expertise as well as personal experience, she reminded me, echoing our strategy discussions from the previous evening. Lead with the educational components. My phone buzzed with a message from Detective Marshall. Press room filling quickly. Media turnout higher than anticipated. Additional security in place. The heightened interest wasn't surprising. The Mitchell family's prominence in Lakeside, combined with the expanding scope of the allegations, had transformed a local financial crime case into a media event with regional, possibly national implications. "We should go," Olivia noted, checking her watch. Early arrival gives us time to connect with the other victims before facing cameras. The drive to the county government center passed in focused silence, each of us mentally preparing for our roles in the day's events. Despite extensive preparation, a flutter of anxiety persisted in my chest, not about the facts or their presentation, but about the public transformation from respected financial advisor to identified victim of exploitation. "Remember," Olivia said as we pulled into the reserved parking area, "this press conference reclaims your narrative. Diana doesn't get to define what happened to you." The reminder centered me immediately. This wasn't about exposure or vulnerability, it was about truth, prevention, and justice for multiple victims across years of calculated predation. Inside, the preparation area buzzed with controlled activity. Sophia Mitchell was already there, speaking quietly with 5 individuals I recognized from case files as previous victims of the Mitchell family's schemes. Detective Marshall and Agent Washington conferred with the district attorney, while technical staff finalized presentation materials showing simplified versions of the financial structures we'd analyzed. "Emma," Sophia greeted me, genuine warmth in her expression. "Everyone, this is Emma Cooper, whose courage and financial expertise broke open the entire operation." The introduction felt excessive given my reluctant entry into this situation, but the appreciation in the other victims' eyes was undeniable. They understood, in ways no one else truly could, the disorientation of discovering that trusted relationships had been elaborately constructed mechanisms of exploitation. "Thank you all for being here," I said sincerely. "Standing together creates a truth too powerful to dismiss." A woman about my age stepped forward, Melissa Jenkins, according to the case files, Nathan's 3rd wife before me. When Sophia first contacted me, I almost declined to participate. I'd spent years believing I'd simply made poor financial decisions during my marriage. The thought that it was deliberate, calculated exploitation seemed almost harder to accept. Her candor resonated deeply. "The systematic nature of the deception is almost incomprehensible," I acknowledged. "Even with overwhelming evidence, some part of me still struggles to reconcile the Nathan I thought I knew with the person revealed through this investigation." "That's by design," another victim noted, James Harrington, who'd been targeted through a business partnership with George rather than a romantic relationship with Nathan. "They specifically cultivate trust and emotional investment, alongside the financial connections. Makes it harder for victims to accept the truth, even when confronted with evidence." "Which is exactly why this press conference matters," Sophia interjected. "Each individual story might be dismissed as misunderstanding or poor judgment. Together, they reveal an undeniable pattern of predatory behavior spanning more than a decade." Detective Marshall joined our circle, her professional demeanor tempered with genuine respect. "We're ready to begin in 15 minutes. The format will be as discussed. Opening statement from the district attorney outlining charges and investigation status, followed by Agent Washington summarizing the financial crime patterns, then brief statements from each of you focusing on recognition patterns and warning signs." "Any update on the Mitchell family's response?" Sophia asked. "Diana's attorney is holding a competing press conference across town," Detective Marshall confirmed. "Still pushing the family misunderstanding narrative, though with diminishing media interest as evidence details have emerged." "And Nathan?" I couldn't help asking. despite knowing his perspective shouldn't matter. Maintaining that he was manipulated by his parents, Detective Marshall replied, her tone neutral, but her expression skeptical, despite substantial evidence of his central role in victim selection and trust cultivation. The continued denial was unsurprising yet still somehow disappointing. Even facing overwhelming evidence, Nathan remained committed to evasion rather than accountability, a final confirmation, if any were needed, of his fundamental character. As we moved toward the press room, Marcus arrived, his presence unexpected but immediately reassuring. "Thought you might appreciate some professional support?" he explained, giving my shoulder a brief, encouraging squeeze. The entire leadership team wanted to be here, but we figured a crowd might seem intimidating. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Having Horizon's visible support means everything for my professional standing. "The firm stands fully behind you," he assured me. "In fact, the board has expedited approval for your financial exploitation education program. They're preparing an announcement concurrent with this press conference, emphasizing our commitment to client protection." The synchronization of professional recovery with public accountability created a moment of perfect alignment, transforming personal trauma into institutional improvement and educational opportunity. Whatever community judgment might follow today's revelations, my professional path forward was secure and purposeful. The press room fell silent as we entered, dozens of reporters and cameras focusing on our procession to the prepared table. The district attorney, Howard Chambers, began with a comprehensive outline of the charges filed against Diana, George, and Nathan Mitchell: wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, financial exploitation of vulnerable adults, conspiracy, and most recently, reopened investigation into Rebecca Winter's disappearance. Agent Washington followed with a clinical summary of the financial crime patterns identified across multiple jurisdictions, using simplified diagrams to illustrate the sophisticated mechanisms the Mitchell family had employed to obscure their activities. The operation functioned as a carefully structured system, she explained, indicating flowcharts displayed on screens behind her. Each family member played specific roles: victim identification and trust cultivation, financial documentation, and transaction execution, narrative management, and community positioning. This division of labor allowed them to maintain respectable public personas while systematically exploiting targeted individuals. When my turn came to speak, the prepared statement I'd rehearsed repeatedly flowed with surprising ease. I focused primarily on recognition patterns, the warning signs I'd missed as a financial professional that might help others identify similar exploitation attempts. The most dangerous predators, I explained, meeting the cameras directly, aren't strangers offering obvious scams. They're trusted individuals who cultivate relationships specifically designed to facilitate exploitation. They target not just financial resources, but emotional vulnerabilities, creating dependencies that make questioning their actions feel like betrayal of genuine connection. As other victims shared their experiences, a comprehensive pattern emerged. Different details but identical methodologies, different time periods, but consistent strategies, different relationships but uniform outcomes. The collective testimony created an undeniable portrait of calculated predation, spanning more than a decade. Questions from reporters followed, most focusing on technical aspects of the financial crimes or legal proceedings. When attention inevitably turned to emotional impacts, I maintained my professional framing, acknowledging the personal devastation while emphasizing the systemic issues that allowed such exploitation to continue undetected for years. As financial professionals, I noted in response to a particularly pointed question about missing warning signs, we're trained to identify suspicious patterns in transactions and investments, but we have significant blind spots when those patterns occur in our personal relationships, particularly when they're disguised as care, protection, or family loyalty. Near the end of the session, a reporter from the Lakeside Chronicle asked the question I'd been anticipating and dreading equally. Ms. Cooper, given Diana Mitchell's contention that this remains a family financial misunderstanding being criminalized, what would you say directly to the Mitchell family if given the opportunity? The room quieted, collective attention focusing on my response. I took a measured breath, setting aside my prepared talking points for something more authentic. I would say that family, true family, is built on mutual respect, honest communication, and genuine support. It doesn't exploit vulnerabilities, manipulate trust, or weaponize connection. What the Mitchell family created wasn't family at all. It was a sophisticated criminal enterprise disguised as family bonds. I paused, finding unexpected conviction rising beneath the prepared professionalism. And I would add a message specifically for Nathan. When you select targets based on their perceived isolation, ensure they're actually isolated, not simply selective about their connections. Quality of relationship always matters more than quantity of relatives. The statement felt like personal reclamation, acknowledging both the vulnerability that had made me a target and the strength that had emerged through authentic connections during the crisis. The Mitchell family had calculated my isolation incorrectly, missing the resilience that professional capability and genuine friendships had cultivated throughout my life. As the press conference concluded, District Attorney Chambers made a final announcement that sent ripples of surprise through the room. Based on evidence recovered during this investigation, federal authorities have identified similar exploitation patterns in 3 additional states. A multi-jurisdictional task force has been established to coordinate prosecution efforts and identify all potential victims. The expanding scope confirmed what our financial analysis had suggested. The Mitchell family's operation extended far beyond Lakeside, creating a web of exploitation that had ensnared dozens of victims across multiple regions. The local family dispute Diana had tried to portray was revealed definitively as an extensive criminal enterprise with far-reaching implications. Outside the press room, reporters continued shouting questions as we departed through a secured exit. The district attorney's office had arranged a private debriefing area where victims and investigators could decompress before facing the public response to our revelations. "You did beautifully," Olivia assured me as we settled into the quiet space. Professional, articulate, educational without minimizing the emotional impact. The collective approach worked exactly as we'd hoped, Agent Washington agreed, joining our conversation. Individual stories created emotional resonance, while the pattern recognition established credibility beyond any single accusation. My phone began buzzing with notifications, messages from clients expressing support, colleagues offering encouragement, even competitors acknowledging professional respect for handling a difficult situation with dignity. The anticipated professional damage Diana had calculated seemed increasingly unlikely as my industry rallied behind ethical standards rather than personal judgment. Detective Marshall entered with updates from ongoing investigation activities. Patricia Lawson's testimony has expanded significantly since viewing today's press conference. Apparently, seeing multiple victims speak publicly has convinced her that full cooperation is her best strategy. "What new information is she providing?" Sophia asked, her expression suggesting she anticipated the answer. "Details about Rebecca Winters," Detective Marshall confirmed. "She's acknowledged being present during conversations where Diana and George discussed permanent solutions to Rebecca's threats of exposure. While not a direct confession, it provides context supporting suspicious circumstances rather than suicide. The confirmation that Rebecca's fears had been justified, that the Mitchell family had indeed considered terminal contingencies for exposure threats, sent a chill through the room. The escalation from financial fraud to potential homicide transformed an already serious case into something far darker. "This is now officially a potential homicide investigation," Detective Marshall continued. "We've secured warrants for additional..." properties associated with the Mitchell family, specifically locations Patricia identified as potentially relevant to Rebecca's disappearance. The development created mixed emotions: vindication for Eleanor Winters after years of dismissal, justice potentially addressing Rebecca's fate, but also disturbing confirmation that the exploitation scheme I'd narrowly escaped carried truly life-threatening dimensions. I began, then paused, uncertain how to phrase the question forming in my mind. At similar risk? Detective Marshall completed, her expression professionally neutral but with underlying compassion. Based on documentation recovered from your home, you were still categorized as a viable resource rather than an exposure threat. However, that classification would likely have changed had you discovered their activities independently rather than through their premature action. The clinical assessment was simultaneously chilling and relieving. Confirmation that my situation hadn't yet escalated to physical danger, but might have eventually had circumstances develop differently. The hidden compartment in your home contained contingency files for all family members, Agent Washington added, providing additional context, including detailed exit strategies, identity alternatives, and resource caches. They were prepared for exposure risk, but clearly didn't anticipate the speed and comprehensiveness of this investigation. Thanks to Emma's financial expertise, Sophia noted, previous investigations stalled because victims lacked the technical knowledge to trace the complex financial structures. The Mitchells finally targeted someone with exactly the skills needed to unravel their entire operation. The observation held profound irony. The very professional capabilities that had made me financially attractive as a target had ultimately facilitated the complete exposure of their schemes. Their final mark had become their final mistake. Throughout the afternoon, reports filtered in about public response to the press conference. Diana's competing media event had drawn minimal attention compared to our collective testimony, while financial institutions across the region reported increased inquiries about exploitation protection measures. The educational impact was already extending beyond the specific case, creating broader awareness that might protect countless potential victims. By evening, exhaustion began overtaking adrenaline. The public statement, combined with ongoing investigation assistance, had depleted my reserves after days of intensive engagement with traumatic material. "Time to rest," Olivia declared, noticing my fatigue. "The investigation continues tomorrow, but you've done your part for today." "Actually," Detective Marshall interjected, approaching with an evidence folder, "there's one additional matter Ms. Cooper might want to address today. We've recovered documentation regarding your home modifications." The reminder of how this had all begun, the unauthorized kitchen renovations that had first alerted me to the Mitchell family's invasion, seemed almost quaint given the expanded scope of their crimes. Yet it represented the physical violation of my personal space that had triggered everything that followed. The contractors were apparently unaware of the fraudulent nature of the project, Detective Marshall explained, showing me work orders and design plans. They believed they were executing legitimate renovations authorized by the homeowners. "Can the original features be restored?" I asked, thinking of the vintage cabinets and carefully refinished woodwork I'd spent months restoring before the Mitchells had demolished them. "Potentially," she confirmed. "We've documented the damage for prosecution purposes, and the crime scene processing will be complete by tomorrow. You could technically return home, though many victims prefer neutral space initially after such violations." The prospect of returning to my house, reclaiming my personal space despite its contamination by betrayal and criminal activity, created conflicting emotions. The practical challenge of restoration offered potential therapeutic value, yet the memories of violation might prove too pervasive for genuine comfort. "I don't have to decide immediately," I confirmed, needing time to process the possibility. "Not at all," Detective Marshall assured me. "Your home remains secure, and temporary accommodations can be arranged for as long as necessary." Some victims find restoration empowering, while others prefer completely fresh beginnings. Both approaches can support healthy recovery. The option itself was meaningful. Choice restored after choices had been systematically removed through manipulation and deception. Whatever I decided about the physical space, the agency to make that decision represented significant reclamation. Later that evening, settled again in Olivia's guest room, I reviewed media coverage of the press conference. Most reports focused on the systematic nature of the Mitchells' operations, the sophisticated financial structures, and the pattern of exploitation across multiple victims. A few highlighted the educational aspects I'd emphasized, particularly recognition patterns that might help others identify similar vulnerability. My phone rang. Eleanor Winters, calling with reaction to the day's developments. "I watched your press conference," she said without preamble. "Rebecca would have been proud. You articulated exactly what she tried to communicate years ago when no one would listen." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely moved by the connection to a woman I'd never met but whose experience had foreshadowed my own. "I'm so sorry the authorities dismissed her concerns." "They're listening now," Eleanor noted, satisfaction evident in her voice. Detective Marshall called with updates on the new investigation directions. They're searching a property near the Wisconsin border that Patricia identified as potentially significant. The development confirmed the investigations continued, momentum beyond the public revelations of the press conference. Justice mechanisms were proceeding independently of media attention or community opinion, a reassuring demonstration of institutional integrity despite the Mitchells' attempts to manipulate public perception. "Will you be okay?" I asked, concerned about Eleanor reliving traumatic uncertainty as Rebecca's case reopened. "I've lived with this uncertainty for 7 years," she replied, with the steady composure of long-endured grief. Truth, however painful, brings more peace than unanswered questions. Whatever they discover, I'm grateful investigations are finally proceeding without the Mitchells controlling the narrative. After our conversation ended, I found myself considering the parallel paths of recovery. Eleanor's long journey through grief and advocacy, Sophia's rebuilding after financial devastation, my own nascent steps toward reclamation of professional and personal identity. Each represented different stages of healing from the same source of harm, different manifestations of resilience against calculated exploitation. Morning brought renewed focus and unexpected developments. Detective Marshall called early with significant news. The search of the Wisconsin property has yielded potential evidence in Rebecca's case. Human remains found in a wooded area on the property's northern boundary. The discovery created complex emotions: vindication for Eleanor's persistent refusal to accept the suicide narrative, justice potentially addressing long unanswered questions, but also somber confirmation of worst fears. Identification will require forensic processing, Detective Marshall continued, her tone professionally measured. But personal effects found with the remains are consistent with items Rebecca was known to be carrying when she disappeared. "Have the Mitchells been informed?" I asked, wondering how they would respond to this escalation of consequences. "Yes. Nathan has requested a private meeting with prosecutors, suggesting he has clarifying information about Rebecca's case. His attorney has indicated potential interest in cooperation agreements." The development wasn't surprising. Nathan had always prioritized self-preservation, his loyalty extending only as far as personal benefit. With homicide charges potentially forthcoming, he would inevitably seek whatever advantages cooperation might offer. "Does this change the financial crimes prosecution?" I asked, concerned about potential plea arrangements reducing consequences for the extensive fraud and exploitation. "Unlikely to significantly impact those charges," Detective Marshall assured me. "The evidence is too comprehensive, the victim pool too extensive. Any cooperation agreement would focus on the homicide investigation rather than dismissing the financial crimes." The update provided reassurance that justice would still address the systematic exploitation that had targeted dozens of victims, even as investigation expanded to encompass more serious charges against specific family members. Later that morning, I met with Marcus at Horizon Financial to discuss my gradual return to professional responsibilities. The firm had maintained my client relationships through temporary reassignments, but many clients had specifically requested my return once circumstances permitted. "Take whatever time you need," Marcus emphasized as we reviewed transition plans. "But know that your clients are eager for your return. Your handling of this situation has actually strengthened their confidence in your judgment and integrity." Even though I missed the warning signs in my personal life, I asked, giving voice to the professional insecurity that lingered despite intellectual understanding of the sophisticated deception involved. "Especially because of how you responded. Once those signs became clear," Marcus countered, "you immediately recognized the implications, took appropriate protective actions, reported to authorities, and assisted in exposing the full scope of the operation. That's exactly the kind of measured response and ethical clarity clients value." The perspective helped reconcile my professional identity with my experience as a victim, not separate aspects in conflict, but interconnected facets of a unified whole. My professional capabilities had facilitated effective response to victimization, while my personal experience had enhanced my professional understanding of exploitation dynamics. The Financial Exploitation Education Program is generating significant interest, Marcus continued, showing me preliminary curriculum outlines developed by the Compliance Department. Industry organizations have already expressed interest in broader implementation. This could extend far beyond our client base. The potential to transform personal trauma into systematic protection for countless others offered profound meaning, purpose, emerging from pain, prevention rising from personal experience. Whatever else the Mitchell family had taken from me, they had inadvertently provided the foundation for work that might ultimately save others from similar exploitation. By afternoon, I felt ready to visit my house for the first time since the investigation began. Detective Marshall had confirmed that crime scene processing was complete, though restoration work hadn't yet begun. Olivia offered to accompany me, understanding the emotional challenge of confronting a space so fundamentally violated. "You don't have to decide anything today," she reminded me as we drove the familiar route to my neighborhood. "This is just an initial assessment, an opportunity to reclaim your right to access your own property." The house looked deceptively normal from outside, the classic craftsman lines and careful landscaping unchanged despite the upheaval within. Only the security notices posted on doors and windows indicated anything unusual had occurred in the seemingly peaceful residence. Detective Marshall met us as arranged, providing official access through the crime scene seals. "Everything has been photographed and cataloged," she explained, unlocking the front door. "Some areas show investigation evidence, fingerprint powder, removed fixtures where documentation was hidden. But the space is functionally yours again." Entering felt surreal, simultaneously familiar and foreign, known and altered. The living room furniture had been returned to approximate original positions after evidence collection, though subtle differences emphasized that others had controlled this space in my absence. The kitchen revealed more dramatic disruption. Demolished cabinets, partially removed fixtures, construction materials abandoned mid-installation when investigators had intervened. The physical manifestation of invasion was jarring despite intellectual preparation. "They didn't just want my house," I observed, taking in the systematic destruction of features I'd carefully restored. "They wanted to erase my imprint on it, replace my design choices with theirs, control even the aesthetic environment." "Classic dominance behavior," Detective Marshall noted. "Financial exploitation often extends beyond monetary assets to include physical spaces, personal possessions, even clothing and appearance choices. Comprehensive control reinforces victim dependence and uncertainty." Moving through each room, I mentally cataloged what remained untouched, versus what had been altered or violated. My home office showed particular disruption, files reorganized, reference materials rearranged, even furniture repositioned to accommodate Diana's preferred layout rather than my established workflow. The basement revealed the most significant violation, the hidden compartment behind the water heater now exposed and empty after evidence collection, its presence a constant reminder that my home had been selected not just for financial value, but for strategic utility in criminal operations. "I'm not sure I can live here again," I admitted, the cumulative impact of these violations settling into certainty. Even with complete restoration, knowing what happened in these spaces. "Many victims make that choice," Detective Marshall acknowledged without judgment. "Physical spaces can retain emotional associations difficult to overcome. Starting fresh elsewhere is sometimes the healthier option for long-term recovery." The validation of this instinct, that seeking new space represented legitimate healing rather than surrendering to the violation, provided unexpected relief. Practical questions about property value, market timing, and financial implications could be addressed later. For now, the emotional clarity that this house could no longer be home represented important progress. "If you decide to sell, timing flexibility might be beneficial," Detective Marshall added. "Property values in this neighborhood will likely increase once renovation of the Mitchell estate is complete." "Renovation?" I asked, confused by the reference. "The district attorney's office is pursuing comprehensive asset forfeiture," she explained. "Properties acquired through fraudulent means will be liquidated to provide victim restitution. The Mitchell family's primary residence represents significant potential recovery value." The symmetry was striking. The family that had invaded my home to finance their schemes would lose their own home to compensate their victims. While financial restitution couldn't address emotional damage, the practical justice of this outcome offered meaningful closure. Outside again, breathing fresh air untainted by memories of violation, I felt surprising lightness despite the difficult recognition that my carefully restored house could no longer serve as my home. The property represented just one aspect of what the Mitchell family had attempted to take from me: financial resources, professional standing, personal autonomy, and letting it go signified moving forward rather than remaining tethered to spaces they had contaminated. "What happens next?" Olivia asked as we prepared to leave the property I now recognized as my past rather than my future. Professionally, I returned to Horizon gradually, focusing initially on the exploitation education program, I replied, clarity emerging through articulation. Personally, I find a new home. Something chosen with full awareness rather than vulnerability. Someplace without associations to manipulation or betrayal. "And regarding the Mitchells?" she prompted gently. "I provide whatever testimony and financial analysis the prosecution requires," I stated simply. "But otherwise, I stopped giving them space in my life or thoughts. They've occupied enough of both already." The detective nodded approval at this healthy boundary setting. "The criminal justice process will continue regardless of your ongoing involvement. Your contributions to date have already secured the foundation for comprehensive prosecution." Driving away from the house felt unexpectedly liberating. Not abandonment, but release. Not retreat, but advancement. Whatever physical and financial losses remained after legal proceedings concluded, the reclamation of personal agency represented more significant recovery. 3 months later, I stood before a packed auditorium at Lakeside Community College, presenting the inaugural session of Recognizing Financial Exploitation, Protection Strategies for Individuals and Institutions. The audience included financial professionals, social service providers, law enforcement representatives, and community members, all seeking better understanding of predatory patterns that the Mitchell case had brought to public attention. "Financial exploitation succeeds through isolation," I explained, indicating slides showing common vulnerability factors. Predators deliberately separate victims from support systems that might recognize warning signs or question suspicious activities. This isolation isn't always physical. It can be informational, emotional, even professional. From the front row, Sophia Mitchell nodded encouragement, her presence representing continued cooperation in educational outreach following the successful prosecution of her family members. Her testimony had proved crucial in securing convictions on all financial charges, while Nathan's eventual cooperation had provided evidence supporting homicide charges in Rebecca's case. The most effective protection isn't just financial literacy, I continued, advancing to the core principles of the curriculum Horizon Financial had developed and now shared industry-wide. It's connection, maintaining relationships diverse enough that manipulation becomes visible through contrast, transparent enough that financial decisions receive appropriate scrutiny, and supportive enough that vulnerability doesn't create desperation for connection at any cost. The session concluded with practical implementation strategies and resource connections, followed by extensive questions from attendees seeking to apply these principles in various professional and personal contexts. The engagement reflected genuine commitment to addressing exploitation vulnerabilities that the Mitchell case had exposed within our community and institutions. Afterward, Eleanor Winters approached, her dignified composure now softened with something resembling peace. "Rebecca would consider this her vindication," she said, gesturing toward the departing attendees carrying materials on exploitation. "Recognition. Not just the legal consequences, but the prevention education that might spare others similar experiences." The funeral for Rebecca had occurred 2 weeks earlier, after forensic confirmation of her identity and release of remains for proper burial. The service had drawn unexpected attendance, not just family and friends from her life, but fellow victims of the Mitchell family's schemes, investigators who had finally brought truth to light, and community members seeking to correct years of misunderstanding about her disappearance. "I think about her often," I admitted to Eleanor. "Her documentation saved others, including possibly me. Her foresight created protection extending beyond her own life." "Legacy comes in unexpected forms," Eleanor replied with the wisdom of hard experience. "Rebecca couldn't save herself, but she created the foundation for saving others. There's profound meaning in that continuation." The perspective resonated deeply with my evolving understanding of recovery. Not just personal healing, but broader contribution. Not just individual restoration, but systemic improvement. The exploitation education program had already been adopted by financial institutions across 3 states, with professional organizations seeking expansion to national implementation. My personal rebuilding had progressed alongside these professional developments. A new home in a lakefront community 20 miles from Lakeside provided fresh beginning without complete disconnection from established support networks. The property, a contemporary design with open spaces and abundant natural light, represented deliberate choice rather than traumatic reaction, intentional creation of environment rather than restoration of violated space. Financial recovery continued through legal proceedings, with restitution payments beginning as Mitchell family assets were liquidated through forfeiture processes. The practical justice of these mechanisms provided material compensation alongside the emotional validation of comprehensive consequences for their actions. Most significantly, my understanding of connection had transformed through this experience, recognizing that authentic relationships need not be numerous to be effective, that quality of support matters more than quantity of relations, that family can be chosen rather than inherited or imposed. The very isolation the Mitchells had calculated as vulnerability had revealed itself as selective curation of meaningful connection rather than actual absence of support. As Eleanor departed with promises to attend future education sessions, Olivia arrived to join me for dinner, a weekly tradition we'd maintained throughout the recovery process, providing structured normalcy amid continuing legal proceedings and life transitions. "Successful presentation," she observed, having watched from the back of the auditorium. You've found exactly the right balance between personal experience and professional expertise, authentic without being exposed, educational without being clinical. The assessment captured what I'd worked to achieve: integration of personal trauma into professional contribution without allowing exploitation to define my identity or capability. The experience had become part of my expertise rather than limitation of my effectiveness. Marcus called, Olivia continued as we walked toward the parking area. The Financial Industry Association wants to feature the Exploitation Education program at their national conference. They're requesting you as keynote speaker. The opportunity represented significant professional recognition, acknowledgement that my experience had generated valuable insights rather than compromising credibility. The Mitchell family had calculated that victimization would undermine my professional standing. Instead, it had ultimately enhanced my authority on protection against exactly the methods they had employed. I'll need to develop expanded materials, I noted, already considering how the curriculum might evolve for national implementation. Focus on institutional recognition patterns in addition to individual warning signs. Already thinking like a keynote, Olivia observed with approval. From victim to national expert in under 6 months. Not exactly the outcome Diana Mitchell anticipated when she started demolishing your kitchen. The observation captured the fundamental miscalculation at the heart of the Mitchell family's operation. Their assumption that targeting successful, capable individuals offered greater financial return without recognizing that those same capabilities would facilitate effective response once their schemes were exposed. They chose the perfect victim, I agreed. Just not in the way they intended. 6 months after the press conference that had transformed private violation into public accountability, I stood on the deck of my new home, watching sunset colors paint Lake Michigan in impossible golds and crimsons. The Mitchell case continued through various legal proceedings, financial restitution mechanisms, ongoing asset forfeiture processes, homicide prosecutions specifically addressing Rebecca's death, but no longer dominated my daily thought or defined my identity. Professional restoration had progressed steadily, with most clients returning to my management and the exploitation education program generating institutional recognition beyond original expectations. Horizon Financial had created a specialized division focusing on protection strategies, with my role expanded to include both client advising and program development. Personal rebuilding had followed similar trajectory, new home established with deliberate care, social connections maintained, with enhanced appreciation, financial security restored through combined professional continuation and legal restitution. The systematic dismantling the Mitchell family had attempted had ultimately led to more intentional reconstruction across every aspect of life. Most significantly, the experience had transformed understanding of vulnerability and strength, recognizing that the same characteristics can represent either, depending on surrounding context and personal awareness. The professional success and personal independence that had made me an attractive target had also provided the resilience and resources to effectively respond to exploitation. The Mitchell family had calculated my isolation as vulnerability, missing the distinction between quantity of relations and quality of connection. They had assessed my financial success as exploitable resource, overlooking the capabilities that had generated that success. They had evaluated my independence as manipulation opportunity, failing to recognize the strength underlying that self-sufficiency. In their meticulous planning, sophisticated strategies, and calculated targeting, they had ultimately made just one critical error. They had selected a victim capable of becoming their most effective adversary, transforming personal trauma into systematic exposure of their entire operation. As twilight deepened over the lake, I reflected on Eleanor Winter's observation about unexpected legacy, how Rebecca's documentation had created protection extending beyond her own life, how tragedy had ultimately generated prevention that might spare countless others similar exploitation. My own experience had followed similar pattern, Personal violation becoming foundation for educational outreach with potentially far-reaching impact. The Mitchell family had invaded my home seeking financial gain, but their ultimate legacy was comprehensive exposure of exploitation methods they had employed successfully for years. They had targeted my resources expecting continued predatory success, but instead created the circumstances for their operation's complete dismantling. They had selected the wrong house, undermined the wrong career, and fundamentally misunderstood the wrong woman, miscalculations from which they would never recover, and from which others would be permanently protected. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.